The sound of Victoria's fancy heels echoed through the office as she watched security escort me to the elevator. She smiled, proud of herself, her lipstick perfect as always. Behind her, my father stood in his office doorway, silent just like he had been my whole life. "I told you this would happen," Victoria called out. "You don't belong here, Victoria. You're just the maid's daughter pretending to be part of this world." "My name is Victoria Marz. I'm 29 years old, and I was just fired, humiliated in front of everyone, at Martinez Technologies, the company my father built, the company where I worked hard for 8 years, climbing from intern to director of operations. And now, my stepmother had finally pushed me out." James, the security guard, pressed the elevator button. He had known me since I was a teenager. His face was full of regret. "I'm sorry, Miss Victoria," he whispered. "This isn't fair." I gently squeezed his arm. "It's okay, James. Everything happens for a reason." Victoria laughed. "Make sure you clean out your desk, though there's probably nothing worth keeping. Just like your mother." As the elevator doors closed, I saw my father still standing there, still saying nothing. Some things never change. My mother had been a housekeeper for the Martinez family when she met my father. Their love story shocked Houston's high society, a rich businessman falling for a maid. But they married anyway, and for a while, we were happy. Then she got sick. Cancer. She died when I was 10. Within a year, Victoria arrived with her fancy clothes and powerful friends, determined to erase all memory of my mother. I walked to my office, my former office, ignoring the stares and whispers. My team looked heartbroken. They knew what this meant. Victoria would replace me with one of her rich friend's kids, someone who had no clue how to run a company. Miss Martinez, my assistant Sarah, rushed over, her eyes full of tears. "We heard what happened. It's so unfair. You've done more for this company than anyone." I stayed calm as I packed my things into a box. "Life isn't always fair, Sarah. But sometimes endings are really just new beginnings." "What will you do now?" she asked, helping me pack. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a small leather notebook, my mother's old recipe book. I always kept it with me, but it wasn't just filled with recipes. Hidden between the pages were notes and plans, things Victoria had no idea about. "Don't worry about me," I said with a small smile. I've been ready for this day longer than Victoria realizes. The truth was, I knew this was coming. For years, Victoria had tried to push me out, but I was too good at my job, too important to the company. She couldn't find a reason to fire me, until now. She had finally set me up. Fake documents, forged signatures. It looked like I had stolen money from the company. It was a perfect plan, and I had to admit she had done it well. It made my blood boil. But Victoria didn't know that I had been watching her too. For years, I had been gathering proof, every shady deal she made, every dollar she stole, every lie she told my father. I had learned from my mother that sometimes the best way to win was to wait, watch, and take notes. As I walked out of Martinez Technologies, I pulled out my phone and called a familiar number. "Daniel, it's time. Are you ready?" Daniel Chen had been my best friend since college. Now he was one of the best corporate lawyers in Houston. He had been helping me build my case against Victoria for 2 years. "Everything's ready," he said. "The evidence is solid. Are you sure about this? Once we start, there's no turning back." I stopped on the sidewalk, looking up at the tall building, my father's company, my family's legacy. "I'm sure," I said. Victoria thought she had won. She thought she had finally erased me, just like she erased my mother. But she was about to learn that underestimating me was her biggest mistake. That night, I sat in my apartment, reviewing all the evidence. It was bad. Hidden bank accounts, fake contracts, years of stolen money. Any investigator would be shocked by what Victoria had done. My phone buzzed with messages from my team, support, anger, offers to quit and protest. I told them to stay. I needed people inside the company for what was coming next. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I opened it to see Maria, one of the company's longtime cleaning staff, and my mother's best friend. "Maija," she said, hugging me tight. "That witch finally did it, huh?" I hugged her back, breathing in the familiar scent of her perfume, the same one my mother used to wear. "It's okay, Maria, I'm okay." She pulled back and studied my face. "You have that look, the same one your madre had when she was planning something. What are you going to do?" I led her inside and showed her the files spread across my dining table. Every secret Victoria thought would stay hidden. Every stolen dollar. Every lie. Maria's eyes widened as she flipped through the papers. Dios mío. How long have you been collecting this? Since the day I overheard her talking about getting rid of me. I repeated, remembering that moment 2 years ago when I had accidentally overheard Victoria's phone call. She had called me an embarrassment to the family name, swearing she wouldn't stop until I was gone. Like your mother, Maria said softly. She did the same thing to Anna, made her life so miserable that she felt she had to leave, even before she got sick. I hadn't known that. Another piece of the puzzle. Another reason Victoria needed to face the consequences of what she had done. Maria continued, next week is the big board meeting. Victoria's been telling everyone about her big presentation, how she's going to announce changes to modernize the company. I smiled. I know, and while she's been planning my downfall, I've been planning something much bigger. The next morning, I dressed carefully in my best suit, the one my father gave me when I was promoted to director of operations. Victoria might see me as just the maid's daughter, but I was also Richard Martinez's daughter, and it was time everyone remembered that. I checked my phone, messages from Daniel confirming everything was ready, updates from my allies inside the company, and a missed call from my father. I ignored it. He'd had years to stand up for me to see what Victoria was doing. His silence was his choice. I grabbed my keys and the thick folder of evidence we had collected. As I caught my reflection in the mirror, I saw my mother's eyes staring back at me, strong, determined, fearless. She had taught me to stand up for myself, to fight for what was right. Victoria was about to learn exactly what that meant. Game on, I whispered, stepping out the door. It was time to take back everything Victoria had tried to steal, my job, my reputation, and my family's legacy. The boardroom of Martinez Technologies was on the top floor, with huge windows showing a breathtaking view of the Houston skyline. As I rode up in a service elevator, the only way to avoid security, I thought about all the times I had sat in that boardroom, presenting reports while Victoria watched me closely, waiting for me to fail. Ready? Daniel texted. Born ready, I replied. Maria had let me in through the back entrance, just like she used to when I was a kid visiting my father at work. Now she hugged me tightly before pointing to the private stairwell leading to the executive floor. Your mother would be so proud, she whispered. I checked my watch, 9:55 a.m. Victoria's presentation would start at 10 o'clock. She would be telling the board about my so-called crimes and explaining how she planned to save the company from corruption. The irony almost made me laugh, if it didn't make me so angry. Through the crack in the boardroom door, I could see them gathering. The board members in their expensive suits, my father at the head of the table, and Victoria at the front, looking perfect in her designer dress and pearls. She was smiling. That smug, satisfied smile. She thought she had won. At exactly 10 o'clock, she began. Ladies and gentlemen, she said smoothly, I call this emergency meeting to discuss a serious issue. As you may know, we had to fire Victoria Martinez yesterday due to strong evidence of financial misconduct. I saw some board members frowning. They had worked with me for years. They knew me. I know this is hard to hear, Victoria continued, pretending to be sad. We all wanted to believe in Richard's daughter despite her humble background. But the evidence is undeniable. She clicked to the first slide of her presentation. Fake bank records and forged documents, making it look like I had been stealing money for years. That was my cue. I pushed open the doors and walked in with Daniel right behind me like I owned the place. You're right about one thing, Victoria, I said. The evidence is very clear. The room exploded into chaos. Victoria's face went pale, then red with anger. Security, she yelled. This is a private meeting. Daniel stepped forward, setting his briefcase on the table. Actually, as the company's legal counsel, I've invited Ms. Martinez to present her own evidence. My father finally spoke, his voice tired. Victoria, what are you doing here? Something I should have done a long time ago, I said, looking him in the eye. Showing you the truth about your wife. Victoria let out a shaky laugh. This is ridiculous. The board has already seen proof of her crimes. You mean these? I held up the same documents she had used against me. Interesting how all the digital files were created last week. The board members leaned forward, checking the dates more carefully. But that's not why I'm here. I continued, pulling out my own file. I'm here to show everyone what Victoria has really been doing with the company's money for the past 5 years. What followed was the most satisfying 30 minutes of my life. Slide by slide, document by document, I exposed everything. Her secret bank accounts, the fake consulting companies, the money she had stolen. The proof was undeniable. This is nonsense, Victoria snapped, her calm mask slipping. Richard, are you going to let her do this? To me? To us? My father sat there, looking older than I had ever seen him. Is this true, Victoria? He asked. Of course not, she shot back. She's lying, just like her mother always did. The words hung in the air like poison. I saw my father flinch, real anger crossing his face for the first time. Don't, he said quietly. Don't you dare talk about Anna like that. Victoria must have realized her mistake because she quickly changed her approach. Richard, darling, she's just trying to cause trouble. You know how she's always been jealous of our relationship. Like you were jealous of my mother? I shot back. Jealous enough to make her life so miserable that she quit working here. Maria told me everything. How you spread rumors about her, made her life harder, even before she got sick. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Maria? The cleaning woman? You're believing gossip from servants now? No, I said calmly. I'm believing the evidence. Like this. I pressed play on an audio file. Victoria's own voice filled the room, talking about framing me, about getting rid of the embarrassing reminder of my father's first marriage once and for all. The color drained from her face. My father stood up slowly, his hands shaking. Get out, he said. Richard. Get out? His voice was sharp, full of authority. Security will escort you from the building. The police have already been notified about the fraud. Victoria looked around desperately, but no one came to her defense. The board members were already studying the evidence, their faces serious. She grabbed her bag and rushed out, her usual perfect composure gone. The room was silent. My father turned to me. Victoria, I don't. Not now, I said softly. There's still work to do. The next few hours were a blur. Police reports, emergency board meetings, damage control. Victoria was arrested at the airport, trying to flee to the Cayman Islands. The company's lawyers worked fast to recover the stolen money. My name was officially cleared. A week later, I sat in my old office, my office again, staring out at the city. A knock on the door made me turn. About a minute, my father asked. I nodded, motioning for him to sit. He lowered himself into the chair, looking both older and somehow lighter than before. I failed you, he said simply. I failed your mother. I let Victoria ruin everything because I was too blind to see the truth. Yes, I said. You did. He nodded, accepting it. I can't change the past, but I want you to know your mother would be so proud of you, not just for exposing Victoria, but for everything you've done, everything you've become. I felt tears well up but held them back. I learned from her, I said. She taught me to be strong, to stand up for what's right. Even when she was sick, she never gave up. My father smiled, though there was sadness in his eyes. She did, and she passed that strength on to you. We sat quietly for a moment, so many things left unsaid between us. Then he spoke again. The board wants you to be the new CEO. They don't trust my judgment anymore, and honestly, I don't blame them. The company needs a new leader. A better one. I stared at him shocked. Dad, you deserve it, Victoria. Not because you're my daughter, but because you've proven you're the best person for the job. You protected this company when I couldn't. Now it's your turn to lead it. 2 months later, I stood in front of the company's employees, giving my first speech as CEO of Martinez Technologies. The changes we made were already making a difference. More honesty in business, fairer policies, and a foundation to help employees' children with their education. As I looked at the crowd, I saw Maria smiling proudly from the back. I saw my old team, now promoted to leadership roles they had earned. I saw my father, retired, but finally present in my life. And in my heart, I saw my mother. Not as she was when she was sick, but how she was when I was little, strong, loving, fearless. Victoria had tried to erase us, the maid and her daughter, a past she wanted to forget. But all she did was make us stronger. Sometimes justice doesn't come in big dramatic moments. Sometimes it's found in simple truths. And sometimes the best revenge isn't about tearing others down. It's about building something better from the ruins they left behind. As the applause filled the room, I touched the small recipe book in my pocket, my mother's legacy, now mine to carry forward. Victoria had never understood that real strength doesn't come from money or power. It comes from knowing who you are and never letting anyone take that away.
The black dress felt like armor as I stood at the entrance of the funeral home, my hand trembling on the brass door handle. I'd rehearsed this moment countless times since receiving the call about Dad's passing, but nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. "Only family is allowed here." The sharp voice cut through the somber atmosphere like a knife. Poppy, my stepmother of 3 years, blocked the doorway with her perfectly manicured hand. Her face was a mask of false grief, not a single tear smudging her immaculate makeup. "I'm Stephanie, and this was supposed to be my father's funeral. The father who raised me alone after Mom died, who taught me to ride a bike, who cried at my college graduation. And here I was, being denied entry to say goodbye. I am family," I managed to say, my voice stronger than I felt. "He was my father." Poppy's lips curved into a cruel smile. "Was being the operative word, dear. I'm his wife, and I make the decisions now. We're keeping this intimate." Behind her, I could see familiar faces filling the chapel. Friends from Dad's golf club, distant relatives I barely knew, even her yoga instructor. My blood boiled. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, taking a step forward. "That's Derek from Dad's accounting firm. He met him twice." "Stephanie," a familiar voice called out. My cousin Rebecca pushed past Poppy, wrapping me in a tight hug. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Poppy's facade cracked slightly. She couldn't stop Rebecca without making a scene, and she lived for maintaining appearances. "Let her in," a deep voice commanded. Hassan, Dad's lawyer, appeared beside Poppy. His presence carried authority that even she couldn't ignore. Mr. Kelly specifically requested his daughter's presence in his final arrangements. Poppy's nostrils flared, but she stepped aside. As I walked past her, she whispered, "Enjoy the show. There won't be much left for Daddy's little girl." The service was a blur of faces and voices. I sat in the front row, Rebecca's hand squeezing mine, as speakers shared memories of Dad. Poppy played the grieving widow perfectly, dabbing at dry eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. During the eulogy, I noticed Brian, Dad's friend from the country club, watching me intently. He whispered something to Poppy, who nodded slightly. The exchange made my skin crawl. After the service, Hassan approached me. "Stephanie, we need to discuss the will reading tomorrow. Your father left specific instructions." "What kind of instructions?" I asked, noticing how Poppy suddenly appeared interested in our conversation. "Everything will be clear tomorrow," Hassan said carefully. "Just know that your father was prepared." Poppy interrupted, placing her hand on Hassan's arm. "Surely we can handle this privately, Hassan. No need to burden Stephanie with these matters so soon after her loss." Hassan removed her hand firmly. "The reading is at 2 p.m. tomorrow. All parties must be present." As people began filtering out, Rebecca pulled me aside. "Something's not right, Steph. Have you seen the estate lately? Poppy's been spending money like water. That tennis court she built last month? The new pool house?" I hadn't visited the estate since Dad married Poppy. The few times I tried, she'd made excuses about Dad being too busy or too tired. "She's up to something," Rebecca continued. "And Brian's involved. I overheard them talking about offshore accounts last week." Before I could respond, Hassan pressed an envelope into my hands. "Your father wanted you to have this before tomorrow's reading. Don't open it until you're alone." The envelope felt heavy, like it carried more than just paper. As I left the funeral home, Poppy's voice carried across the parking lot. "Don't forget to check your mailbox, dear. I sent you a lovely sympathy card." The mockery in her tone made my decision clear. Dad had built his legacy from nothing, working countless hours to create something meaningful. I wouldn't let Poppy destroy that. In my car, I held the envelope Hassan had given me, feeling its weight. Whatever was inside, I knew it was the key to understanding what was really going on. Dad had always told me to trust my instincts, and right now they were screaming that this was just the beginning. Rebecca texted me, "Coming over tonight. Don't do anything until I get there. And Steph, Dad would be proud of how you handled today." I started the car, catching a glimpse of Poppy watching from the funeral home steps. She raised her hand in a wave that felt more like a warning. But she had no idea who she was dealing with. I wasn't just Daddy's little girl anymore. I was his daughter, and I would protect everything he stood for. The envelope sat heavy in my purse as I drove home, carrying what I hoped were the answers I needed to set things right. The law office felt colder than usual as we gathered for the reading of Dad's will. Poppy sat across from me, wearing a black designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Rebecca squeezed my hand under the table as Hassan entered with a thick folder. "Before we begin," Hassan said, adjusting his glasses, "I want to note that Thomas was very specific about how this meeting should proceed." I'd spent the night reading Dad's letter repeatedly. It contained just 3 words: trust the process. Classic Dad, always teaching lessons even from beyond. Hassan cleared his throat. "To my beloved wife, Poppy," he began reading, and I watched her lips curl into a satisfied smile. "I leave you the contents of our joint account, totaling approximately $250,000. Poppy's smile faltered. "That's impossible. There must be more." "To my daughter, Stephanie," Hassan continued, ignoring her interruption, "I leave the following: full ownership of Kelly Enterprises, all remaining financial assets, and complete control of the family estate." "What?" Poppy shot to her feet. "This is ridiculous. I was his wife." "There's more," Hassan said firmly. "A special clause states that any financial decisions regarding the estate must receive Stephanie's written approval. This includes any transactions made in the past 3 months. The colour drained from Poppy's face. "The past 3 months? He can't do that retroactively." "Actually, he can," Hassan replied, sliding a document across the table. "As the majority shareholder, he put this clause into effect 90 days ago. All transactions during this period require review and approval." Brian, who had been quietly observing, suddenly looked uncomfortable. "Surely there's room for negotiation." "There's also mention of a hidden asset," Hassan added, "known only as the Marina Project." Poppy's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. I'd never seen her lose composure like this. "What's the Marina Project?" I asked. "That information will be revealed once all recent transactions are properly audited," Hassan explained. "Your father was very thorough in his planning." Rebecca leaned forward. "So, all those renovations you've been doing, Poppy, the new cars, they needed Stephanie's approval." "This is absurd," Poppy snapped. "I was taking care of Thomas's estate as his wife. By spending millions on luxury items." I finally spoke up. "Dad lived modestly his entire life. The only thing he splurged on was my education." Poppy's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what your father wanted. We discussed everything." "Then you won't mind showing me the paperwork for all these discussions," I replied calmly. "Hassan, I'd like a full audit of all accounts and transactions from the past 3 months." "You can't do this to me," Poppy hissed. "I made your father happy." "You made him a stranger," I corrected her. "I couldn't even visit him in his final months because you always had an excuse." Brian stood up. "Perhaps we should take a break." "Sit down," Hassan commanded. "There's one final item." Thomas left a video message. He pressed play on his laptop, and suddenly, Dad's face filled the screen. He looked tired but determined. "Stephanie, if you're watching this, I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything in person, but I needed to protect what I built. The Marina Project contains everything you need to know. Hassan will guide you. And Poppy," he paused, his expression hardening. "I know about Beatrice." Poppy gasped audibly. Next to her, Brian shifted uncomfortably. "What's he talking about?" I demanded. "Who's Beatrice?" "Meeting adjourned," Hassan announced. "Stephanie, please stay behind. We have documents to sign." As Poppy stormed out, Rebecca caught her arm. "Those designer bags you bought last week, better keep the receipts. Once they left, Hassan handed me a USB drive. Your father recorded everything, Stephanie, but be careful. What you'll find, it's bigger than just Poppy's spending. The Marina project, I asked, is a trap. He smiled slightly. Your father suspected something was wrong months ago. He set this up to protect you and the company. Rebecca, who had stayed behind, pulled out her phone. You should see this, Steph. Poppy's sister Beatrice just posted about her new vacation home. Guess who paid for it? I took the USB drive, feeling its weight in my palm. Dad always said the truth comes with receipts. Be careful, Hassan warned. Poppy won't go down without a fight. As we left the office, I noticed Brian making a heated phone call in the parking lot. He turned away when he saw me, but I caught 2 words. She knows. Rebecca linked her arm through mine. Ready to dive into that USB drive? I nodded, thinking of Dad's words. Trust the process. Let's see what other surprises my father left behind. The Marina project was waiting, and with it, the truth about what really happened in Dad's final months. Poppy thought she had won, but she didn't know my father like I did. He always played the long game. Rebecca and I huddled around my laptop as I inserted the USB drive. My hands shook slightly as folders appeared on screen. Financial records, surveillance, and one simply labelled Marina. Look at this, Rebecca pointed to a series of screenshots. Bank transfers from the company account to something called BF Consulting. BF, I muttered. Beatrice Fleming, Poppy's sister. A knock at my door made us both jump. Through the peephole, I saw Brian standing there, shifting nervously. What do you want? I called through the door. Just to talk, Stephanie. 5 minutes. It's about your father. I glanced at Rebecca, who shook her head, but something in his voice made me open the door. Make it quick, I said, blocking the entrance. Brian looked exhausted, his usual polished appearance dishevelled. You need to be careful. Poppy, she's not who you think she is. Really? And who are you in all this? Her faithful messenger? He ran a hand through his hair. I was your father's friend first. He asked me to keep an eye on things, but it got complicated. Complicated how? The Marina project isn't just a development deal. It's... A car horn blared outside. Brian jumped, looking over his shoulder. I've said too much, just check the security footage from March 15th, your father's office. Before I could respond, he hurried away. Through the window, I watched him climb into a black SUV where someone waited in the driver's seat. Well, that was weird, Rebecca said, already searching for the March 15th footage. The video showed Dad's office at night. Poppy entered, followed by a woman I recognized from photos as Beatrice. They went straight to Dad's safe. Turn up the volume, I whispered. Oh, can't keep stalling, Beatrice was saying. The investors want answers about the Marina. Thomas suspects something, Poppy replied, trying combinations on the safe. He's changed all the passwords, moved accounts around. Then get rid of him faster. The deadline's approaching and we need those documents. I felt sick. Rebecca paused the video, her face pale. Steph, the date on this? It's 2 weeks before your dad's heart attack. My phone buzzed. A text from Hassan. Found something. Meet me at the office. Now. 20 minutes later, we sat in Hassan's office as he spread documents across his desk. Your father came to me about suspicious activities at the company, large sums being diverted through shell corporations, all linked to BF Consulting. Beatrice Fleming, I confirmed. Yes, but it goes deeper. She's involved with some questionable real estate developers. The Marina project was supposed to be your father's crowning achievement, affordable housing for seniors. But Poppy and Beatrice had other plans. Luxury condos, Rebecca guessed, scanning through papers. With inflated costs and kickbacks, Hassan nodded. Your father discovered their scheme and started gathering evidence. That's when things went wrong. A familiar voice interrupted us. Still working late, Hassan? Poppy stood in the doorway, Beatrice beside her. My stomach churned at seeing them together, knowing what I now knew. Just catching up on paperwork, Hassan said smoothly, subtly sliding documents into a folder. How convenient, Poppy smiled coldly. Stephanie dear, I was hoping we could talk about your father's wishes. His wishes seem pretty clear from the will, I replied. Things aren't always what they seem, Beatrice stepped forward. Sometimes papers get mixed up, signatures get confused. Is that a threat? Rebecca stood up. A reality check, Poppy corrected. Stephanie, be reasonable. You know nothing about running a company. Let the adults handle this. I thought of Dad's video message, his tired eyes, his warning. You're right. I don't know everything about running a company, but I know enough about right and wrong. Your father had a weak heart, Beatrice said quietly. Stress can be unpredictable. The implication hung heavy in the air. Hassan's hand moved toward his phone. We'll be in touch, Poppy said, turning to leave. Oh, and Stephanie, that footage you're so interested in? Technology can be so unreliable. Files corrupt, servers crash. After they left, Hassan immediately called security to guard the evidence room. They're getting desperate, he observed. Good, I said, my voice hard. Because now we know what really happened to Dad. Rebecca squeezed my shoulder. We need to move faster. If they're willing to threaten you openly, they won't stop, Hassan agreed. But neither will we. Your father left one more safeguard, something even I don't know about. He called it the final receipt. I opened the Marina folder on the USB drive, understanding flooding through me. Dad hadn't just left evidence, he'd left a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to the truth. Time to go hunting, I said, thinking of Poppy's smug face. The woman who thought she'd won everything was about to lose it all. The Marina project files revealed a web of deception that made my blood boil. Fake contracts, inflated costs, and a trail of money leading to offshore accounts. But it was the last document that stopped me cold. A medical report from Dad's personal physician dated 3 days before his death. No signs of heart disease, I read aloud to Rebecca. Perfect health for his age. My phone rang. Poppy's name flashed on the screen. What do you want? I answered. Dinner. Tonight. Just us girls. Her voice dripped honey. The estate at 7. There are things you should know about your father. Rebecca shook her head frantically, but I already knew my answer. I'll be there. Are you crazy? Rebecca exploded after I hung up. After what we just found? I'm wearing a wire, I said. Hassan arranged it. We need her to talk. The estate looked different as I drove up. Colder, somehow. Poppy answered the door in a silk robe, champagne glass in hand. Stephanie, darling, come in. Beatrice is joining us. Of course she was. They led me to the dining room, where Dad's favourite vintage wines were laid out like props in their performance. Your father, Poppy began, pouring wine I didn't touch, was a complicated man. Really? He seemed pretty straightforward to me. Beatrice laughed softly. Oh, honey, you didn't know him like we did. You mean you didn't know him at all? I countered. Tell me about BF Consulting. The sisters exchanged glances. A legitimate business venture, Beatrice said carefully. Like the Marina project, those fake contracts must have taken ages to forge. Poppy's glass froze halfway to her lips. Careful, dear. Some things are better left buried. Like Dad's medical records, the ones showing no heart problems. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Beatrice's smile became fixed. You're in over your head, Poppy said quietly. Walk away now. Take a generous settlement. Live your life. Or what? I'll have a convenient accident? Things happen, Beatrice shrugged. Companies fail. Files disappear. People disappear. I stood up slowly. Is that what happened to Dad? Did he disappear when he found out what you were doing? Your father was weak, Poppy spat, mask finally slipping. He wanted to throw away everything we'd built because of his precious conscience. You mean everything he built, while you were planning to steal it? Steal? Beatrice laughed. We improved it. Those luxury condos would have made millions more than his ridiculous affordable housing plan. And the kickbacks from the developers? I pressed. The money laundering through BF Consulting? Enough, Poppy slammed her hand on the table. You want to play hardball? Fine. Check your email tomorrow. Those photos of you and that married professor in college might interest the board. I smiled. Blackmail? Really? I was 20, and he was my thesis advisor. Nothing happened. But this conversation? Very interesting. I pulled out my phone, stopping the recording app. Their faces went pale. You little... Beatrice lunged for the phone. It's already uploaded, I said, stepping back. And those medical records? Copies are with 3 different lawyers. Get out, Poppy whispered. Get out of my house. Your house? I looked around the familiar walls. The will says different. You have until tomorrow to pack. As I turned to leave, Poppy called out, You have no idea what you're doing. The Marina project has powerful investors. They won't let you ruin this. Watch me. Outside, Rebecca was waiting in her car. Did you get it? I nodded, hands shaking now that it was over. They practically confessed, but they mentioned investors. Powerful ones. Hassan called while you were inside. He found something in the company's servers. Someone deleted files right after your dad died, but he recovered them. My phone buzzed with a text from Brian. Need to meet. It's about the investors. Your father left something else. Can we trust him? Rebecca asked. Another text came through, this time from an unknown number. Back off or the next heart attack won't be faked. I showed Rebecca the threat. They're scared. Good. Steph, this is serious. Maybe we should... No. I cut her off. Dad died trying to stop them. I won't let them win. As we drove away, I saw Poppy watching from the window, phone to her ear. She was calling someone, probably the mysterious investors. Let them come. Dad had taught me well. Always keep receipts, always have a backup plan, and never show your full hand until the final play. The real game was just beginning. The coffee shop was nearly empty when Brian slid into the booth across from me. Rebecca sat at a nearby table, pretending to work on her laptop while keeping watch. You're taking a huge risk meeting me, he said, glancing nervously over his shoulder. Talk fast, I replied, recording on my phone under the table. The investors, they're not just developers, they're connected to some serious people. Your father found out they were using the Marina project to launder money. And you know this how? He pulled out a thumb drive. Because I helped him gather evidence. That's why he kept me close. I was his inside man. Before I could respond, Hassan rushed into the cafe. We need to go. Now. Someone broke into my office. What did they take? I asked, grabbing my bag. Nothing. They left something instead. He held up his phone, showing a photo of his ransacked office. On his desk, a single playing card. The Queen of Hearts, splattered with red paint. Brian went pale. It's starting. That's their warning sign. We relocated to Rebecca's apartment, spreading out the contents of both USB drives on her dining table. Look at this, Hassan pointed to a document. Wire transfers from the Marina project to a company called Queen's Holdings. That's Beatrice's company, Brian explained, but it's just a front. The real money goes through multiple shells before reaching the investors. My phone buzzed. An email from an anonymous account, the subject line, "Watch this." The attached video showed Dad in his office arguing with someone off camera. You can't do this, Dad's voice was clear. These people trusted us with their retirement funds. They'll get a better return this way, Poppy's voice replied. Everyone wins. It's fraud, and you know it. I'm shutting it down. That would be unwise, Thomas. A man's voice, unfamiliar. Think of your daughter. The video cut off. Another email arrived immediately. Back off, or the next video shows how your father really died. They're bluffing, Rebecca said, but her voice shook. No, Brian stood up. They're not. I was there that night. I saw... A sharp crack split the air. The window behind Brian shattered. He dropped to the floor as Rebecca screamed. Nobody move, Hassan commanded, pulling out his phone. Police are on their way. Brian clutched his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. Just grazed me. They're sending a message. While waiting for the police, I checked my email again. A new message contained just an address and time. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. Come alone or the next shot won't miss. The police arrived, took statements, but I could tell they weren't going to help. This was bigger than they could handle. After they left, Hassan pulled me aside. "There's something else. Your father left a safety deposit box. I got access this morning. Inside the box, we found a single document, detailed evidence of money laundering through Queen's Holdings, with names, dates, and account numbers." "This is it," I breathed. "This is what got him killed." "There's more," Hassan said. "Look at the signature page. There, among the names of Queen's Holdings board members, was a familiar signature: Beatrice Fleming, Chief Financial Officer. She wasn't just Poppy's sister, Rebecca realized. She was the connection to the investors all along. My phone rang. Poppy. "Enjoying the show?" she asked when I answered on speaker. "You won't get away with this." "Oh, but I already have. Ask Brian about March 15th. Ask him what your father's last words were." I looked at Brian, who couldn't meet my eyes. "You have 1 hour to surrender all copies of the evidence," Poppy continued, "or the next video goes public, the one showing how your father begged at the end." The line went dead. "She's lying," Rebecca insisted. "She has to be." But Brian was shaking his head. "I'm sorry, Stephanie. I was supposed to protect him, but I was too late." "Then help me now," I said. "Tell me everything." He took a deep breath. "The video exists, but what they don't know is that your father was wearing a wire that night. The full recording, it's in a place only he knew about." "The marina," Hassan suddenly said. "The actual marina. Your father owned a boat slip there." I remembered weekends on that boat, Dad teaching me to fish, pointing out stars. He always said the water held secrets. "We have 1 hour," I said, standing up. "Let's make it count." Outside, a black SUV crawled past Rebecca's apartment. They were watching, waiting for us to make a move. But they didn't know what I knew. Dad's favourite saying, "The best place to hide something is in plain sight." The marina held the truth, and this time I was ready for whatever waited in the shadows. The marina's security lights cast long shadows across the docks as we approached Dad's old slip. The Sweet Caroline, named after Mom, sat quietly in the dark water. "2 cars following us," Rebecca whispered from the back seat. Black SUV and a silver sedan. "Let them come," I said, pulling into the parking lot. "Brian, you're sure about this?" He nodded, still holding his injured shoulder. "Your father spent every Sunday here the month before he died. Said he was organising his thoughts." Hassan met us at the dock, carrying a small toolkit. "Security cameras are looped. We have 20 minutes max." The boat's cabin was exactly as I remembered. Worn leather seats, the old navigation system, and Dad's lucky fishing hat still hanging by the wheel. But something was different. "The floorboards," Brian pointed, "under the captain's chair." Hassan worked quickly with a screwdriver. The third board lifted to reveal a waterproof case. Footsteps on the dock. "Well, isn't this cozy?" Poppy stood there, Beatrice beside her. 4 men in suits spread out behind them. "You're trespassing," I said, standing up. "Funny, I was about to say the same thing." Poppy's smile was razor sharp. "Hand over the case, dear." "It's not what you think," Beatrice added. "Your father was confused at the end, paranoid." "Paranoid enough to wear a wire," I challenged, "to record everything." One of the suited men stepped forward. "Miss, you don't want to play this game. Walk away. Take a vacation. Forget what you think you know." "Like you made Dad forget?" The words burned coming out. "With whatever you put in his drink that night?" Poppy's composure cracked. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "March 15th, I said. "Dad confronted you about the Marina project, about the money laundering, about everything." "Thomas was going to ruin years of careful planning," Beatrice snapped. "We tried to reason with him." "By poisoning him?" Hassan's voice was cold. "By making it look like a heart attack?" The suited man moved closer. "Last chance. The case now." "You know what's funny?" I said, reaching into my jacket. "Dad taught me something about boats. Always have a backup plan." I pulled out my phone, pressed play. Dad's voice filled the night air. "If you're hearing this, I'm dead. Poppy and Beatrice think they destroyed all the evidence, but they missed something. The real Marina Project files, the offshore accounts, the recordings of every meeting, it's all been sent to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Poppy's face went white. You're bluffing. The timestamp on that email? I showed them my screen. 10 minutes ago, Dad set it up to send automatically if I entered the boat's security code tonight. Chaos erupted. 2 of the suited men ran. Beatrice grabbed for the case, but Rebecca was faster, swinging Dad's old fishing rod like a weapon. It connected with Beatrice's shoulder, sending her stumbling backward. You little bitch! Poppy lunged at me. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Hassan smiled. Right on schedule. You set us up, Beatrice realized too late. No, I corrected her. Dad did. Every Sunday here, he wasn't just organizing thoughts, he was organizing your downfall. Red and blue lights flooded the marina. FBI agents swarmed the docks, weapons drawn. Federal agents! Everyone on the ground! Poppy tried to run but slipped on the wet dock. As agents cuffed her, she screamed, You have no proof! I opened the case, revealing a laptop and hard drive. Actually, we have everything. Every transaction, every threat, every meeting, including March 15th. Your father was smarter than we thought, Beatrice said bitterly as agents led her away. Brian stepped forward. Stephanie, I'm sorry, I should have told you sooner. You helped him in the end, I said. That counts for something. As the chaos settled, I sat in Dad's captain's chair, running my hand over the worn leather. Rebecca joined me, holding Dad's lucky hat. There's one more thing, Hassan said, handing me an envelope from the case. Your father left this for after. Inside was a single photo, Dad and me on this boat, both laughing, from my last birthday before Poppy. On the back, he'd written, Justice comes to those who wait. I love you, sweetheart. The Marina Project was always about protecting you. The FBI wants statements, Rebecca said gently. I nodded, standing up. Through the cabin window, I watched Poppy and Beatrice being driven away in separate cars, their empire of lies crumbling in a single night. Ready? Hassan asked. Almost. I hung Dad's lucky hat back in its spot. Some things belonged right where they started. The marina's security lights still cast shadows, but they didn't seem as dark anymore. Dad had left me more than evidence. He'd left me the truth. And sometimes that's the most powerful weapon of all. The courthouse buzzed with tension as I took the witness stand. Poppy sat at the defendant's table, designer outfit replaced by prison orange. Her perfectly manicured nails now bitten to the quick. Please state your name for the record, the prosecutor began. Stephanie Kelly. And can you identify the contents of Evidence Exhibit A? I looked at the laptop and hard drive. Dad's final gift. Yes. These contain recordings and documents detailing the money laundering operation run through the Marina Project. Objection, Poppy's lawyer stood. Speculation. Overruled, the judge said. Continue. The prosecutor played the March 15th recording. Dad's voice filled the courtroom. I won't let you steal from innocent people, Poppy. These retirement funds. You're being dramatic, Thomas. Poppy's recorded voice was cold. Take the money and look the other way. Like you want me to look the other way about the poison you've been slipping into my drinks? Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Present-day Poppy's face contorted with rage. That's a lie, she shouted, standing up. He was paranoid. Order! The judge banged his gavel. Mrs. Moore, control yourself! The recording continued. A man's voice, now identified as one of the arrested investors, said, Don't be difficult, Thomas. Accidents happen. They do, Dad replied. That's why I'm wearing a wire. The prosecutor stopped the playback. What happened next, Ms. Kelly? According to the medical examiner's new report, my father was poisoned with a substance that mimicked heart attack symptoms. He died 3 days later. Beatrice, testifying as part of her plea deal, was next on the stand. It wasn't supposed to go that far, she said, avoiding my eyes. The plan was just to scare him. Who gave the order? The prosecutor asked. Poppy. She said Thomas was becoming a liability. The investors were getting nervous about the money laundering operation. You lying snake! Poppy lunged at her sister, requiring 2 guards to restrain her. The judge called a recess. In the hallway, Rebecca hugged me tight. "You're doing great," she whispered. "Dad would be so proud." Hassan approached with Brian, who was still wearing a sling. "The FBI finished tracking the offshore accounts. They've frozen everything." "Good," I said. "The retirement funds?" "Can be restored to the original investors," Hassan confirmed. "Your father's final failsafe worked perfectly." Back in session, the prosecutor presented the financial evidence, the complex web of shell companies, the diverted funds, the falsified documents, all leading back to Poppy and Beatrice. "And what was the total amount laundered through the Marina project?" the prosecutor asked. $57 million, I answered. Money stolen from retirement accounts and pension funds. Poppy's lawyer tried to paint her as an unwitting participant, manipulated by her sister and the investors. But the evidence was overwhelming. The jury took only 2 hours to reach a verdict. On the count of first-degree murder, we find the defendant, Poppy Moore, guilty. On the counts of money laundering and fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Poppy screamed as they led her away. "This isn't over, Stephanie. You'll regret this." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. "Ms. Kelly, what happens to the Marina project now?" I stepped up to the microphones. "The original plan will proceed as my father intended. Affordable housing for seniors, built honestly and legally. And the company will continue his legacy of ethical business practices. No shortcuts, no schemes, just fair deals and honest work." Later that evening, we gathered at Dad's boat. Hassan handed out champagne. "To Thomas," he said, raising his glass, "who planned the perfect revenge from beyond the grave." "To Dad," I echoed, "who taught me that justice is worth fighting for." Rebecca pointed to a small package on the captain's chair. This was in the evidence locker. They just released it. Inside, I found Dad's journal. The last entry, dated March 15th, read, "My dearest Stephanie, if you're reading this, the truth has finally come out. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you everything, but I needed to protect you. Remember what I always said about karma? It's not revenge we should seek, but justice. You are my greatest achievement, not any business deal or project. I know you'll make the right choices. All my love, Dad." Brian cleared his throat. "The FBI wants to know if you'll testify against the remaining investors next month." I looked around at my support team. Rebecca, Hassan, Brian, all brought together by Dad's final plan. "Of course, I said. "We finish what he started." The marina lights reflected off the water, creating dancing patterns on the boat's hull. Somewhere, I hoped Dad was watching, knowing his legacy was safe. Not just the company or the Marina project, but his real legacy, the truth about right and wrong, about justice and consequences. And Poppy? She learned the hard way that karma doesn't forget. Neither did Dad. Neither would I. The morning sun streamed through Dad's office windows as I cleared the last of Poppy's things from his desk. Each item told its own story of deception: forged documents hidden in designer folders, USB drives disguised as lipsticks, a phone filled with encrypted messages. "Look what I found," Rebecca called from the storage room. She emerged holding a dusty model of the Marina project, Dad's original vision. "He kept it," I smiled, running my finger along the miniature buildings, "even after they tried to change everything." The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Kelly? The first residents are here." My heart raced as I walked to the lobby. An elderly couple stood there, holding hands and housing applications. "Welcome to Marina Gardens," I said, extending my hand. "I'm Stephanie." "We can't believe the rates," the woman gushed. "Everyone said we'd have to leave the neighborhood when our rent doubled, but this—" "My father believed everyone deserves a safe place to call home," I replied. "Let me show you around." As we toured the completed complex, I saw Dad's dream come to life. Community gardens, a medical clinic, social spaces where seniors could gather, everything he'd fought to protect. Hassan met us in the courtyard, legal papers in hand. The last of the recovered funds have been returned to the investors. And, he paused, smiling, Poppy's appeal was denied. "Good," I said. What about the evidence room? That's why I'm here. We found something else. Back in Dad's office, Hassan unlocked a hidden panel behind the bookshelf. Inside was a small safe I'd never seen before. The FBI techs discovered it during their final sweep, he explained, entering a code. Your birth date. The safe swung open to reveal a letter and a small box. The letter was in Dad's handwriting. My dearest Stephanie, if you're reading this, you've already uncovered the truth and brought those responsible to justice. But there's one last thing you need to know. The day Poppy came into our lives, I knew something wasn't right. Call it instinct, call it experience, but I started planning. The Marina project wasn't just about housing. It was a trap for anyone who'd try to corrupt it. In this box is Mum's locket. I always told you it was lost, but I kept it safe, waiting for the right moment. Inside is a photo of us three, taken the day you were born. This is your real legacy, not the business, not the buildings, but the love of family and the strength to stand up for what's right. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from the pain of losing me, but I hope I taught you enough to protect yourself from those who try to hurt you. Remember, karma isn't about revenge. It's about balance. You've restored that balance. I love you always, Dad. My hands shook as I opened the locket. The tiny photo was faded but clear. Mum in her hospital bed, Dad beaming, newborn me sleeping peacefully. There's something else, Hassan said softly, pointing to the safe's back wall. A final USB drive was taped there. The file contained a video. Dad, in this very office, recorded the morning of March 15th. Good morning, sweetheart, he began. If you're watching this, everything went according to plan. The evidence caught them, the money was recovered, and the Marina project is what it was always meant to be. He leaned closer to the camera. But most importantly, you proved what I always knew, that you're stronger than any challenge, smarter than any scheme, and more capable than you ever imagined. We found his real medical records, Brian added, entering the office. He knew they were poisoning him. He could have stopped drinking the coffee, saved himself. But then we wouldn't have caught them, I realized. He sacrificed himself to protect others. Rebecca squeezed my hand as Dad's video continued. Don't mourn me too long, sweetheart. Instead, celebrate what we built together. Your mother would be so proud of you. I know I am. The video ended. Through the window, I watched new residents moving into Marina Gardens. Each one represented a life improved, a promise kept. Ready for the opening ceremony? Hassan asked. I fastened Mum's locket around my neck. Almost. On Dad's old desk, I placed the model of Marina Gardens, the locket photo, and his lucky fishing hat. A shrine not to loss, but to legacy. Now I'm ready, I said. Outside, a crowd gathered for the ribbon cutting. As I stood at the podium, the morning sun caught Mom's locket, sending sparkles across the crowd. Perfect karma. Perfect balance. Dad was right. This wasn't about revenge. It was about justice, about protecting others, about doing what's right even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I picked up the scissors ready to cut the ribbon and open the next chapter. Not just for me, but for everyone who'd been given a second chance by one man's final brilliant plan.
The string quartet played Pachelbel's canon as I stood alone at the back of the grand ballroom, watching my sister float down the aisle like a princess in her designer gown. That dress alone cost more than my annual salary. Not that anyone knew I was the one who paid for it. I'm Greta, and this is the story of how my perfect little sister's dream wedding became my worst nightmare, and ultimately my sweetest revenge. Darling, you could at least pretend to smile, my mother Hope whispered, appearing beside me in her champagne-colored dress. And where's your +1? I thought you said you were bringing someone. Change of plans, I muttered, forcing a smile as Solstice reached the altar. Her soon-to-be husband Rowan beamed at her with adoration, completely oblivious to the family drama unfolding in the wings. Well, it's not too late, you know. Miguel, the wedding planner, is single, Mom stage whispered, nodding toward the sharply dressed man directing the photographers. And he's quite handsome. I rolled my eyes. Mom, please, can we focus on Solstice's big day? The ceremony proceeded like a fairy tale, exactly as Solstice had dreamed. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. White roses and orchids cascaded from every surface, and the guest list read like a who's who of local society. Perfect, 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 just like Solstice. During the reception, my best friend Camila grabbed my arm. You okay? You look like you're about to explode. I'm fine, I lied, watching Solstice work the room, just tired of deflecting questions about my relationship status. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ's voice boomed through the speakers. It's time for the speeches. My stomach churned as Solstice took the microphone, champagne glass in hand. I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate with Rowan and me today, especially my family, Mom, Dad, and my big sister Greta. I raised my glass, praying she'd leave it at that. She didn't. You know, Greta's always been there for me, even if she's been a bit preoccupied with her career lately. Solstice's smile turned sharp. I mean, someone has to be the successful businesswoman of the family, right? Though I have to wonder if it's worth being married to your job instead of finding actual love. The room fell silent. I felt hundreds of eyes turned to me. But hey, at least she's got her spreadsheets to keep her warm at night. Solstice laughed, and a few uncomfortable chuckles rippled through the crowd. I just hope she doesn't end up alone forever. There's more to life than work, sis. My father Jonathan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Camilla's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. To love. Solstice raised her glass, her diamond ring catching the light. May we all be lucky enough to find it. Well, most of us anyway. The guests drank, but I couldn't move. The champagne in my glass trembled as my hand shook with rage. I can't believe she just did that, Camila whispered. After everything you've done for her? Everything I'd done. The secret meetings with Miguel to plan every detail. The maxed out credit cards. The drained savings account. All to give my baby sister the wedding of her dreams. And this was my thank you? Greta? Miguel appeared at my elbow, concern etched on his face. Are you all right? I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the marble floor. I need some air. As I headed for the terrace, I heard my mother's voice. Solstice, darling, that wasn't very kind. Oh, Mom, I was just teasing. Greta knows I love her. She's probably just jealous because she's missing out on all of this. Solstice's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. I mean, who wouldn't be? I pushed through the French doors onto the balcony, the cool evening air hitting my face. Behind me, the party continued. My sister's perfect day, funded by the very person she'd just humiliated in front of everyone who mattered. Camila followed me out. What are you going to do? I gripped the stone balustrade, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of revenge. You know what? I think it's time everyone learned who really made this fairy tale wedding possible. Are you sure? Camila asked, but I could see the gleam in her eye. She knew as well as I did. My sister had finally gone too far. Oh, I'm sure, I said, straightening my bridesmaid's dress. If Solstice wants to play princess, she should remember who's been bankrolling her happily ever after. 6 months earlier, I sat across from Miguel in a dimly lit coffee shop, spreading wedding magazines across the table. My sister's vision board lay between us, covered in pictures of luxury venues and designer dresses she couldn't possibly afford. Your sister has expensive taste, Miguel said diplomatically, tallying numbers on his iPad. The venue alone is nearly 6 figures. I sipped my now cold coffee. She's always had champagne tastes on a beer budget, but this time I'll make it happen. Why? Miguel's dark eyes studied me carefully. From what you've told me, she hasn't exactly been Sister of the Year. The bell above the cafe door chimed as my mother walked in, spotting us immediately. Perfect timing, as always. Greta, what a coincidence. She pulled up a chair uninvited. And you must be Miguel, the wedding planner. Solstice has told me so much about you. I bit back a laugh. Solstice had met Miguel exactly once, then pawned all the actual planning off on me because she was too busy with her social commitments. Mrs. Ellis, Miguel nodded professionally. We were just discussing the budget. Mom waved her hand dismissively. Oh, don't worry about that. Solstice's future in-laws are handling everything. Actually, Mom, I started, but she cut me off. You know, Miguel, Greta here is single and so successful in her career, she just made junior partner at her firm. Mom, I felt my face flush. We're here to discuss Solstice's wedding. I'm just saying, dear, you're not getting any younger. And my phone buzzed, saved by the bell. Sorry, work call. I need to take this. I escaped to the sidewalk outside, but there was no call. Just another credit card statement showing the deposits I'd already paid for Solstice's dream venue and the ridiculous designer dress she'd fallen in love with. Through the window, I could see Mom chattering away at Miguel, probably listing all my accomplishments while simultaneously lamenting my single status. The story of my life, successful enough to bankroll my sister's fantasy wedding, but somehow still a disappointment because I didn't have a ring on my finger. My phone buzzed again, for real this time. It was Camila. Please tell me you're not really paying for that entire wedding, she said without preamble. I watched a couple walk past the cafe, hand in hand. Someone has to. You know Solstice can't afford it, and Rowan's family isn't as wealthy as she's led everyone to believe. But why you? After everything she's done? Remember your college graduation? How could I forget? Solstice had thrown a tantrum because my party was stealing attention from her new boyfriend, so she deliberately caused a scene that ended with my cake on the floor and half the guests leaving early. It's complicated, I sighed. Mom and Dad always had to work so hard just to keep us afloat. Now that I can finally give them something, you're giving Solstice something, again, while she takes all the credit, again. Miguel emerged from the cafe, my mother thankfully nowhere in sight. He held up my abandoned coffee cup. Your mother is enthusiastic. That's one word for it. I took the cup. Did she try to set us up? Only 3 times in 5 minutes. He smiled. She also mentioned you're paying for the wedding yourself. I froze. She wasn't supposed to know that? She doesn't. She was bragging about how much money you make and how you could afford such a lavish wedding of your own if you just put yourself out there. He made air quotes. I connected the dots myself. Please don't tell Solstice, I said quickly. She thinks Rowan's family is covering everything. Miguel's expression softened. Your secret's safe with me, but can I ask why? Why do all this in secret? I stared into my cold coffee. Because for once, I want her to have exactly what she wants. No compromises, no settling, no reason to throw a fit and ruin someone else's moment. Maybe then she'll finally appreciate you. Maybe then she'll just be happy, I whispered, and stop trying to make everyone else miserable. Miguel touched my arm gently. You're a good sister, Greta. Better than she deserves. If only he knew how wrong he was, because standing there, watching happy couples stroll by and thinking about all the times Solstice had undermined me, belittled me, or straight up sabotaged me, I wasn't planning this wedding out of pure sisterly love. I was buying the rope with which my sister would hang herself. Every crystal, every flower, every perfect detail would be a strand in the web of her own making. And when the moment was right, I would show everyone exactly who the better sister really was. I just didn't know then how spectacular that revelation would be. Back at the wedding reception, I found Camila in the powder room, touching up her lipstick. The bathroom's marble countertops probably cost more than my first car, another detail I'd splurged on for Solstice's perfect day. "So," Camila said, meeting my eyes in the mirror, "what's the plan?" "I'm thinking it's time for my maid of honor speech." I smoothed my dress, checking my makeup hadn't run after my near breakdown on the terrace. "You're not even the maid of honor. She chose her friend Ashley, remember? Even though you've done all the work." The bathroom door opened, and Miguel slipped in, looking slightly embarrassed to be in the ladies' room. "Sorry to intrude, but I thought you should know. Solstice is about to do the bouquet toss. She's specifically requesting your presence, Greta." I groaned. "Let me guess. Another opportunity to highlight my perpetual singlehood?" "She announced it as a special chance for my desperate sister to catch some luck," Miguel confirmed, wincing. Camila slammed her lipstick down. "That's it. I've watched her treat you like dirt for 20 years. You need to expose her right now." "Not yet," I said, a plan forming. "Miguel, I need a favor." 10 minutes later, I stood in the crowd of single women, watching Solstice prepare to throw her bouquet. She'd positioned me front and center, of course. "Ready, ladies?" Solstice called out. "Especially you, Greta. This might be your only chance." The crowd tittered. I smiled sweetly. "Throw it, sis. Show us how it's done." She turned her back, made a show of wiggling her hips, and tossed the bouquet high into the air. As planned, Miguel had dimmed the lights slightly, making it harder to see. The flowers sailed over my head, right into Camila's waiting hands. "Oh my God!" Camila squealed convincingly. "I caught it." Solstice spun around, her face falling when she saw I wasn't holding the bouquet. "Oh, well, congratulations, Camila." "Actually," Camila said loudly, "I think this belongs to the person who really deserves it." She walked over and handed the bouquet to Miguel. The room went quiet. Miguel, right on cue, turned to me. "Greta, I've been wanting to say something all day." My mother gasped audibly. Solstice's mouth dropped open. "Working with you these past months has been incredible," Miguel continued, his voice carrying across the now silent ballroom. "Your dedication, your kindness, your attention to detail, it's all been amazing." "Miguel," I said, playing my part perfectly, "this isn't the time." "No, it is the time." He stepped closer. "Everyone here should know just how remarkable you are. Would you have dinner with me next week?" The crowd erupted in cheers and whistles. My mother looked like she might faint from joy. And Solstice, well, if looks could kill, Miguel and I would both be 6 feet under. "I'd love to," I replied, accepting the bouquet as cameras flashed around us. "This is my wedding." Solstice's voice cut through the excitement. "You can't just hijack it like this." "Hijack it?" I turned to face her, steel in my voice. "Like you've hijacked every important moment of my life? What are you talking about?" But her face had gone pale. "My college graduation, my law school acceptance, my promotion party. Every single time I had something to celebrate, you found a way to make it about you." The words flowed out, years of resentment behind them. "But you know what? You're right. This is your day, and I've done everything in my power to make it perfect." "What do you mean you've done everything?" Rowan asked, appearing beside his new wife. Miguel stepped forward. "Should I tell them about all the planning meetings, the vendor negotiations, the countless hours Greta spent ensuring every detail was exactly what Solstice wanted?" "Shut up," Solstice hissed. "The planning was all me, and Rowan's family paid for everything." I pulled out my phone, opening my banking app. "Want to see the receipts, little sister? Every deposit, every payment, every maxed out credit card?" The color drained from her face. "You're lying." "The Swarovski crystal centerpieces you insisted on? Mine? The hand-painted French chocolates as favors? Mine, that designer dress you're wearing? All me. Rowan looked confused. But my parents, they said they were handling it. They handled the rehearsal dinner, I corrected. Everything else? That was your sister-in-law, the one you just publicly mocked for being too focused on her career. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Somewhere in the back, a glass shattered, making everyone jump. Well, my father's quiet voice cut through the tension. I think it's time we all had a little family chat. Dad led us into a private room off the main ballroom, the same room where Solstice had gotten ready this morning. Her veil still lay draped over a chair, price tag conveniently removed. Another $3,000 I'd never see again. Sit, Dad commanded. For once, both Solstice and I obeyed without argument. Mom hovered by the door, wringing her hands. Jonathan, maybe we should wait. No, Hope, this ends now. Dad's voice was firm. Miguel, Rowan, would you give us a minute? Miguel squeezed my shoulder as he left. Rowan hesitated, looking at Solstice, but followed when she wouldn't meet his eyes. Now then, Dad said, settling into a chair across from us. Let's talk about what's really going on here. What's going on is that Greta's trying to ruin my wedding. Solstice burst out, tears threatening to spill. Just like she ruins everything. I laughed incredulously. I ruin everything? I paid for everything. Girls, Dad's sharp tone silenced us both. Solstice, is this true? Did your sister pay for the wedding? Solstice's lower lip trembled. I didn't ask her to. No, I agreed. You just complained to Mom about how Rowan's family couldn't afford the venue you wanted, and cried to Dad about the dress of your dreams being out of reach, and told everyone who would listen that you were settling for less than you deserved. I never meant for you to… To what? To step in? To fix it? Like I always do? I pulled out my phone again. Want to see the texts, Solstice? The ones where you sent me pictures of everything you wanted, followed by sad faces and if-only messages? Mom stepped forward. Greta, sweetheart, why didn't you tell us? Because she knew exactly what she was doing, Dad said quietly. Didn't you, Solstice? Solstice's tears finally spilled over. That's not fair. I just wanted a beautiful wedding. And I gave it to you. I stood up, my own tears threatening. I gave you everything you wanted, and how do you thank me? By humiliating me in front of everyone. You're just jealous because I found love and you haven't, Solstice shot back. Found love? I laughed bitterly. You found a man whose family you lied to about money. You manipulated everyone around you to get what you wanted. Is that love? Stop it, both of you, Mom cried. But Dad held up his hand. No, Hope, let them finish. This has been brewing for years. Remember my law school graduation? I asked, my voice shaking. When you announced your engagement during my party? That was different. Or when you crashed my first big court victory celebration to tell everyone you were pregnant. Even though you knew it wasn't true, you just wanted the attention. Solstice's face crumpled. I lost that baby. And I was there for you. I held you while you cried. I took time off work to help you recover. I wiped angry tears from my cheeks. But the minute I had something to celebrate, you had to tear me down again. I didn't mean to, Solstice whispered. Yes, you did. Dad's voice was gentle but firm. You've always meant to, Princess, and we let you. Mom sank into a chair. Jonathan, we failed both our girls, Hope. Dad looked between us. We let Solstice believe the world revolved around her, and we let Greta think she had to fix everything. A knock at the door interrupted us. Rowan poked his head in. Sorry, but the guests are asking questions. Should we start serving dinner? Yes, Solstice jumped up, smoothing her dress. We should get back to my wedding. Your wedding that your sister paid for, Dad reminded her. The wedding you're using to mock her. Solstice froze, her hand on the doorknob. For a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Shame, maybe? Regret? But then it was gone, replaced by the same entitled expression I'd known all my life. Fine, she said. You want everyone to know? Let's tell them. Let's tell them how my perfect sister swooped in to save the day, like always. Let's tell them how she's so much better than me, so much more successful, so much more responsible. Solstice, Mom pleaded. No, you're right. I stood up, straightening my spine. Let's tell them, all of it. Every manipulation, every lie, every cruel comment. Let's see what your new husband thinks about how you really got your dream wedding. Solstice's hand trembled on the doorknob. You wouldn't. I met her eyes steadily. Try me, little sister. Try me. The dining room buzzed with whispers as we returned to the reception. Solstice immediately plastered on her perfect bride smile, but I noticed Rowan watching her with new eyes. He'd heard enough through the door. I could tell. Miguel handed me a microphone. The floor is yours. Don't, Solstice hissed, grabbing my arm. Please. For a moment, I hesitated. Then I remembered her words from earlier. She's doomed to be alone forever. I tapped the microphone, and the room fell silent. Everyone, I'd like to make a toast to my sister. My voice was steady, surprising even me. You all know Solstice. She's always been the family princess, the one who deserved the very best. Nervous laughter rippled through the crowd. Solstice's fingers dug deeper into my arm. What you might not know is just how far some people would go to give her that very best. I gently pulled free from her grip. Would you like to tell them, Solstice? Or should I? Greta, my mother warned from her table. For instance, this beautiful venue? I gestured around the room. These crystal chandeliers, the hand-painted place cards, the 5-tier cake, all paid for by your supposedly career-obsessed big sister. The whispers grew louder. I saw Rowan's mother lean forward, her eyes narrowing. You see, while Solstice was telling everyone that her in-laws were funding this extravaganza, I was quietly maxing out my credit cards. While she was mocking my dedication to my career, that same career was financing her dream wedding. That's enough! Solstice lunged for the microphone, but Miguel smoothly stepped between us. No, I don't think it is enough, I continued, because for years I've watched you tear me down to build yourself up. Every achievement I've earned, you've tried to overshadow. Every milestone I've reached, you've tried to steal. And I let you, because that's what good sisters do, right? Camila stood up, raising her glass. Tell them about the law school graduation, Greta. Or the promotion party, Miguel added. Or my grandson's christening, Rowan's mother suddenly spoke up, when she announced her engagement during the ceremony. Solstice's perfect mask cracked. I didn't. But here's the thing, Solstice. I turned to face her directly. I didn't pay for this wedding to hurt you. I did it because, despite everything, you're my sister. I wanted you to have your perfect day. All I asked was for you to let me have this one thing, my dignity. Tears streaked her makeup. I'm sorry, she whispered. Are you? Are you really? I asked. Or are you just sorry everyone knows the truth now? I didn't know. Rowan stood up, his voice tight. Solstice, you told me my parents were paying. You let me believe. I can explain, she pleaded. Explain what? Rowan's mother demanded. How you lied to my son? How you manipulated your own sister? The room erupted in overlapping voices. I saw my father put his head in his hands, my mother dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. Stop! Solstice screamed, her voice cracking. Just stop! Fine, I'm horrible. I'm manipulative. I'm jealous of my perfect sister who has everything I don't. Everything you don't? I laughed incredulously. You have a man who loves you, a family who adores you, and a wedding that cost more than my car. What could you possibly be jealous of? Your confidence, she shot back. Your success. The way you never seem to need anyone's approval. Do you know what it's like living in the shadow of someone who seems to do everything right? The room fell silent. Shadow? I whispered. You think you lived in my shadow? Solstice, everything I've ever done, you found a way to diminish. Every time I succeeded, you made sure everyone focused on what I was missing instead. Do you know how many times Mom has asked me why I can't be more like you? More feminine, more social, more focused on finding a husband? Solstice faltered. But you know what? I placed the microphone on a nearby table. This isn't about winning anymore. This is about truth. And the truth is, I'm done competing. I'm done trying to earn your respect or approval. I'm just done. I turned to leave, but Miguel caught my hand. Stay, he said softly. Don't let her drive you away again. The room held its breath. In that moment, I saw every face turn toward us, some sympathetic, some shocked, some angry. But for the first time in my life, I didn't care what any of them thought. No, I said clearly, I think it's time for the bride to enjoy her perfect wedding. After all, she's got everything she wanted. Right, Solstice? I made it halfway across the parking lot before I heard footsteps behind me. Greta, wait! It was Rowan. I turned to face my new brother-in-law, his bow tie askew and his face flushed. You can't leave like this. Watch me. Please, he caught up to me, slightly out of breath. Everything's falling apart in there. Solstice is hysterical. My mother is threatening to annul the marriage, and your parents are arguing about who's to blame for all this. Sounds like a typical family gathering to me. I dug through my clutch for my car keys. She told me everything, Rowan said quietly, after you left. About the money, about the lies, about all of it. I froze. And I don't know what to think anymore. The woman I married today, I'm not sure I know who she is. Sure you do. I turned to face him fully. She's the girl who always gets what she wants, no matter who she has to step on to get it. The girl who can cry on command and make everyone forget what she did wrong. The girl who's terrified of not being enough. Another voice cut in. My father emerged from the shadows, hands in his pockets. Who learned early on that if she couldn't be the best, she could at least be the most memorable. Dad, don't defend her. Not now. I'm not defending her, he said, moving closer. I'm trying to understand her, to understand both of you. Where did we go so wrong? Rowan shifted uncomfortably. I should go back inside. No, stay, Dad said. You're family now, for better or worse, and families face their problems together. That's rich, I laughed bitterly. Where was this family unity all the time Solstice was sabotaging my life? Right here, failing miserably. Dad's voice cracked. Every time we let her behavior slide, every time we told you to be the bigger person, we failed you both. The night air felt heavy with unspoken words. In the distance, I could hear music still playing from the reception, life going on as if my world hadn't just imploded. She's asking for you, Rowan said softly. Says she needs to tell you something. I've heard enough from her to last a lifetime. Greta, Dad stepped closer. Remember when you were 10 and Solstice cut up your favorite dress? Because I got better grades than her? How could I forget? No, he shook his head. Because she wanted to fix it. Make it prettier like the dresses in her magazines. She just didn't know how. What's your point? My point is, your sister doesn't know how to love without destroying things first. That's our fault, not hers. We taught her that attention equals love, and that being the best means making others feel worse. The reception doors opened again, spilling light across the parking lot. Solstice stood there, her perfect wedding dress now wrinkled, her makeup streaked with tears. "Daddy?" Her voice wavered. Is Greta still here?" "I'm here," I called out, surprising myself. Solstice stumbled forward in her heels, nearly falling. Rowan moved to help her, but she waved him off. "I messed up," she said, her voice raw. "I messed up so bad, and I don't know how to fix it." "You can't fix it," I replied. "You can't just say sorry and make everything okay this time." "I know." She wrapped her arms around herself. "But I need you to know something. All those times I tried to ruin your moments, it wasn't because I hated you. It was because I wanted to be you." "What?" "You're so sure of yourself, so capable. Mom and Dad were always so proud of your achievements, and I just wanted them to look at me that way too." "They did look at you that way," I exploded. "They still do. You're their precious princess who can do no wrong." "No," Dad interrupted. "We babied her. There's a difference. We praised you for your accomplishments, Greta, but we praised Solstice just for existing. We didn't do either of you any favors." Solstice took another step forward. "The wedding? I never meant for you to pay for it. I just couldn't stand the thought of having less than you would have had." "I'm not even engaged. But when you do get married, it'll be perfect, like everything else you do." She wiped her eyes. "I wanted to beat you to it, to have something first, something better." The silence that followed was deafening. In that moment, standing in a dark parking lot with my crying sister, my confused brother-in-law, and my guilt-ridden father, I realized something important. This wasn't about winning anymore. It wasn't even about revenge. It was about breaking a cycle that had started long before any of us knew what we were doing. "We should go back inside," Dad said, breaking the tense silence. "Your mother's probably convinced we've all killed each other by now." "I can't," Solstice whispered. "Everyone in there knows what I did, what I am." "They know you're human," Rowan said quietly. "Just like the rest of us." Miguel appeared at the door, his silhouette backlit by the reception lights. "Sorry to interrupt, but Mrs. Bailey, Rowan's mother, is threatening to make a scene if we don't start serving dinner soon." "Of course she is," Solstice laughed weakly. "Can't even get my public humiliation right." "Hey," I found myself saying, "nobody's getting humiliated tonight. Not anymore." "What do you mean?" Solstice looked up. Mascara streaked across her cheeks. "I mean, we're going to fix this, together." I turned to Miguel. "Still got that emergency kit in your car?" 10 minutes later, Solstice sat in Miguel's passenger seat while I fixed her makeup. Dad and Rowan had gone back inside to calm the waters. "I don't deserve this," she mumbled as I blended foundation over her tear tracks. "Probably not," I agreed. "But we're sisters. It's complicated." "Why did you really pay for the wedding?" she asked suddenly. The truth this time. I paused, makeup sponge in hand, because I wanted to prove I could, to prove that being career-focused and single didn't make me less capable of understanding romance and beauty and all the things you always said I was missing. "That's messed up," she said. "Yeah, well, so are we." I finished her makeup and stepped back. "There, now you look like a bride again." "Greta," her voice was small, "remember when we were kids and I used to sneak into your room during thunderstorms? Because you were scared of lightning?" "Yeah." "I wasn't scared." She met my eyes in the mirror. "I just wanted to be close to you. You always made everything feel safe." My throat tightened, "Until you decided being close to me wasn't enough anymore." "I never decided that," she protested. It just happened. The more everyone praised you, the more I felt like I had to be different, better, more. And the more you tried to tear me down to build yourself up. I finished. I'm sorry. She grabbed my hand. I know it's not enough, but I am. And not just because I got caught. Miguel knocked on the window. Ladies, Rowan's got everyone seated for dinner. He's telling them there was a small family matter that needed addressing. I helped Solstice out of the car, her wedding dress rustling. Ready to face the music? No, she admitted, but I don't have a choice, do I? There's always a choice, I said. You can go in there and pretend nothing happened, play the perfect bride like always, or, or you can be real for once. Let people see you're human. Let them see you're trying to be better. She gripped my arm. Will you help me? With what? Being better, being real. Her fingers trembled. Being your sister again. Inside, the reception had settled into an uneasy calm. Heads turned as we entered, whispers following in our wake. But this time, Solstice didn't pose or preen. She walked straight to the head table, picked up a microphone, and faced her guests. I owe everyone an apology, she began, her voice shaking. Especially my sister. Mom half rose from her seat, but Dad gently pulled her back down. I've spent years trying to be perfect, Solstice continued, trying to be better than everyone else, especially Greta. But the truth is, I've never been better than her, not where it counts. The room was silent now, all eyes on my sister as she finally told the truth. This beautiful wedding, every detail you've admired, that was Greta. She paid for it, planned it, made it perfect, not for her glory, but for mine. And how did I thank her? By mocking her in front of all of you. She turned to face me. I can't undo what I've done, but I can try to be worthy of having a sister like you, if you'll let me try. The microphone trembled in her hand. The silence stretched, everyone waiting for my response. And for the first time in years, I saw my little sister, really saw her. Not the manipulative princess, not the attention-seeking drama queen, but the girl who used to crawl into my bed during storms, seeking safety in her big sister's presence. I stood up. Well, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I guess we have some work to do. The rest of the wedding reception transformed into something unexpected, real. The perfect facade cracked, letting authenticity shine through. Solstice kicked off her uncomfortable designer heels. Rowan loosened his bow tie, and somehow the celebration felt more genuine than before. Dance with me, Miguel said, appearing at my elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. Unless you're still planning your dramatic exit. I accepted the glass. I think I've had enough drama for one night. As we swayed to the music, I watched Solstice and Rowan talking quietly with his parents in the corner. Whatever they were saying, it seemed intense but not angry. Progress, maybe. You know, Miguel said, when you hired me for this wedding, I thought you were crazy. Spending all that money on someone who treated you so badly? I was crazy, I admitted, but maybe not for the reasons you think. Oh? I thought I could buy her love, or at least her respect. I shook my head. Turns out those things aren't for sale. No, he agreed, but sometimes they're free if you're brave enough to be honest. Across the room, Camilla was teaching my father some ridiculous dance move, making my mother laugh for the first time all evening. The tension that had suffocated the reception earlier had dissipated, replaced by something more genuine. Greta? Solstice approached, looking uncertain. Can we talk? Miguel squeezed my hand and stepped away. I followed my sister to a quiet corner. Rowan's parents want to help pay for the wedding, she said. They said it's not fair for you to shoulder everything alone. It's already paid for. I know, but... She twisted her rings nervously. They want to reimburse you, and I want to contribute too, from my savings. Solstice? Please, she cut me off. Let me do this. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because it's right. I studied her face, searching for the manipulation I'd grown so accustomed to seeing. Instead, I found something new. Sincerity. Okay, I said simply. She blinked. Okay, just like that? Just like that. But I thought, after everything. Look, I set down my champagne glass. We can't undo the past. We can't pretend those years of competition and hurt didn't happen. But maybe we can build something new, something real. I'd like that, she whispered. Then, unexpectedly, she hugged me. Not her usual performative embrace, but a real tight hug, like when we were kids. Besides, I added when she pulled back, I hear Miguel's a pretty good wedding planner. Maybe he can help me plan my own someday. About that, Solstice smiled sheepishly. I may have been a little hasty in judging your love life. He seems pretty great. He is, I agreed. But this isn't about him or Rowan or finding the perfect partner. It's about being okay with who we are right now. When did you get so wise? She teased, but her eyes were serious. Probably around the same time you got honest. The DJ announced the last dance of the night. Rowan appeared, holding out his hand to Solstice. May I have this dance, Mrs. Bailey? She took his hand, then surprised us both by grabbing mine too. Only if my sister joins us. And so we danced, the bride, the groom, and the sister who paid for it all. Not perfectly choreographed like Solstice had originally planned, but real and a little messy, and somehow better for it. As the night wound down, guests filing out with tired smiles, Solstice caught my arm one last time. Thank you, she said, not for the money or the planning or any of that. Thank you for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to. That's what sisters do, I replied. The real ones, anyway. Mom and Dad joined us, both looking exhausted but happy. Well, Dad said, this wasn't quite the wedding we expected. No, I agreed, watching Miguel pack up the last of his planning materials. It was better. Because it was honest, Solstice added, surprising us all. Mom wiped away a tear. My girls, both of you, I'm sorry we didn't see what was happening all these years. We see it now, Dad said firmly, and that's what matters. As I drove home that night, Miguel following in his car, we did have that dinner date to plan after all, I realized something. The perfect wedding I'd helped create hadn't been the gift Solstice needed. The truth had been. And maybe, just maybe, it had been the gift I needed too. Because sometimes the most beautiful things aren't perfect at all. They're real and messy and honest, just like sisters should be.
I stood in front of the mirror in my wedding dress, holding back tears as I read the prenuptial agreement one last time. My hands trembled, and the paper crinkled under my tight grip. 3 hours before, I was supposed to say, I do, and here I was, being forced to sign away my dreams. I'm destiny, and this should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, it became the day I learned exactly what kind of family I was marrying into. Darling, you're not having second thoughts, are you? Mark appeared in the doorway, looking handsome in his tuxedo, but wearing that familiar worried expression I'd grown to hate. Father says everything needs to be finalized before the ceremony. Your father can wait, I snapped, then immediately regretted my tone. I need a minute, Mark. This isn't what we discussed. He stepped closer, placing his hands on my shoulders. It's just business, sweetheart. You know how important the family company is to Father. He just wants to protect our interests. Our interests? Or his control? I turned to face him. The original agreement was about assets. I waved the paper. This is about forcing me to be a housewife. I have to give up any entrepreneurial pursuits or lose everything in a divorce. How is that fair? Father believes a woman's primary focus should be her family.
You knew this about him. Mark's voice carried that patronizing tone that made my skin crawl. A knock at the door interrupted us. 5 minutes, Bruce's authoritative voice boomed through the wood. The papers need to be signed, Destiny. Don't make this difficult. I caught my reflection again. The elegant white dress, the carefully styled hair, the makeup hiding my exhaustion from countless arguments about this very moment. My phone buzzed in my purse, and I fished it out to find a text from Marley. Whatever happens, remember what we talked about. Check under your bouquet after the ceremony. You've got this, girl. Destiny, Mark prompted, holding out a pen. I took it, my mind racing. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd built in secret over the past year, my fledgling company, my dreams, my independence, all of it hung in the balance. Bruce thought he was clever, trying to clip my wings before I could fly. Fine, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. I'll sign. The scratch of pen on paper felt like nails on a chalkboard. Mark smiled, relief washing over his features as he took the document. I'll get this to Father. See you at the altar, beautiful. The moment he left, I slumped into a chair, careful not to wrinkle the dress. Marley burst in seconds later, her bridesmaid dress swishing around her legs. Tell me you didn't, she said, eyes wide. I did what I had to do. I stood, straightening my spine. But Bruce Russell doesn't know me as well as he thinks he does. Girl, when he finds out... He won't, I cut her off. Not until it's too late. The company's registered under a different name, the investors are all silent partners, and everything's through shell corporations. I've covered my tracks. Marley handed me my bouquet, a knowing look in her eyes. There's something else you should know about the Russells. I found out. Another knock interrupted us. It's time, my mother called through the door. Tell me later, I whispered to Marley as we hurried to take our positions. The ceremony passed in a blur of white tulle and hollow promises. I said I do to a man I loved but didn't trust, joined a family that saw me as property rather than a person, and smiled for photographs that would forever capture this beautiful lie. At the reception, while Mark was distracted by well-wishers, I finally checked under my bouquet. There, tucked into the ribbon, was a folded note from Marley. Bruce Russell's empire isn't as solid as everyone thinks. His new VP John has been looking for a way out. Thought you might want to know. Time to show them what you're really made of. I smiled, tucking the note into my bodice. Bruce thought this prenup would keep me in line, force me to be the obedient wife he wanted for his son. He had no idea that he'd just given me all the motivation I needed to bring his empire crashing down around him. Let him think he'd won. Let him believe I'd submit to his rules and expectations. I'd sign his papers, play his game, be the perfect daughter-in-law on the surface. But underneath, I was already several moves ahead in a game he didn't even know we were playing. To the happy couple, Bruce's voice boomed across the reception hall, raising his glass in a toast. I raised mine in return, meeting his satisfied smirk with a practiced smile. To family, I replied, even as I silently added, and to karma. 6 months into my marriage, I'd perfected the art of deception. Every morning, I kissed Mark goodbye as he left for the family company, then transformed our guest house into my secret headquarters. Today was different, though. Today was the first major client meeting for my startup, albeit under an alias. Your coffee, Mrs. Perfect Housewife, Marley teased, handing me a steaming cup as she entered through the back door. Ready to switch into CEO mode? God, yes. I kicked off my house slippers and pulled my power suit from its hiding place in a garment bag. The investors are meeting us at 11. Did you bring the presentations? All here. She patted her laptop bag. But heads up, I saw Bruce's car heading this way when I turned onto your street. What? I nearly spilled my coffee. He never comes here during the day. I rushed to the window, spotting his Mercedes pulling into the driveway. Quick, grab everything and hide in the bathroom. I'll get rid of him. I barely had time to throw on an apron over my business attire before the doorbell rang. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door with my best surprise smile. Bruce, what an unexpected pleasure. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. Just checking on my daughter-in-law, making sure you're settling into your role properly. His eyes scanned the living room, always searching for imperfections. Of course, I was just about to start preparing lunch for Mark. I gestured toward the kitchen, praying he wouldn't notice the financial documents I'd forgotten to hide on the coffee table. Wonderful. He picked up a magazine from the side table. Though I notice you're still subscribing to Business Weekly. Hardly appropriate reading material for a Russell wife, wouldn't you say? I forced a laugh. Oh, that's Mark's. I just like looking at the pretty office furniture in the ads. A toilet flushed upstairs, and I silently thanked Marley for her quick thinking in establishing our cover story. Marley's here. Bruce's expression soured. That girl's a bad influence. Always was, even in college. She's just helping me plan Mark's birthday party, I lied smoothly. Would you like some coffee? No time, but speaking of parties, he sat down uninvited. The annual company gala is next month. I expect you to take charge of the planning, show everyone what a proper Russell wife can do. I'd be honored. I smiled, already calculating how I could use the event to my advantage. My phone buzzed, a text from our potential investors asking where we were. I discreetly silenced it. One more thing, Bruce added, standing. I heard rumors about a new tech startup making waves in our market. Some woman CEO nobody's heard of. Keep your ears open at those housewife lunches you attend. Any information could be useful. I walked him to the door, maintaining my perfect daughter-in-law facade. Of course, Bruce. I'll let you know if I hear anything. The moment his car disappeared, Marley burst out of hiding. That was too close. Also, we're now officially late. No, I said, grabbing my briefcase. We're exactly where we need to be. Bruce just gave me an idea. 20 minutes later, we walked into a private room at the city's most exclusive restaurant. 5 investors waited, along with John, Bruce's VP, who'd been secretly feeding us information. Gentlemen, I said, stepping to the head of the table. Thank you for your patience. Today, we're not just discussing a new tech platform. We're talking about disrupting an entire industry that's been dominated by dinosaurs for too long. Bold words, one investor said, but why should we trust an unknown? I pulled up our projections. Because while the old guard was busy underestimating people like me, I built this. I clicked through slides showing our beta test results. 300% growth in 6 months, all under the radar. And next month, at the Russell Corp Gala, we go public. That's risky, John warned. Bruce will be too busy watching his empire crumble to stop us. I laid out my plan, watching their expressions shift from skepticism to interest. 2 hours later, we had their commitment. $30 million in funding, contingent on our public launch. You're either brilliant or crazy, Marley said as we headed back. Maybe both. I'm just getting started. I checked my phone to find 3 missed calls from Mark. The real question is, who's going to crack first, my marriage or Bruce's company? Speaking of cracks, Marley hesitated. I overheard something at the country club yesterday about Bruce and some questionable dealings in his past, the kind that could ruin more than just business. I pulled over, turning to face her. Tell me everything. As she spoke, I realized the game was bigger than I'd imagined. Bruce hadn't just tried to control my future. He'd built his entire empire on secrets and lies. And now, I had the power to expose them all. My phone buzzed again. Mark calling. It was time to go home and play the perfect wife, at least for a little while longer. The Russell Corp lobby buzzed with activity as I brought Mark his forgotten lunch, playing the dutiful wife while secretly scanning for familiar faces. That's when I spotted Cade, my brother-in-law, watching me with an intensity that made me nervous. Destiny. He caught up to me by the elevators. We need to talk, privately. I hesitated, clutching Mark's lunch bag. I really should get this too. It's about Bruce. His voice dropped. And what he's planning. My heart skipped, but I kept my expression neutral. Fine, 5 minutes. We took the elevator to the empty conference floor. Through the glass walls, the city sprawled beneath us, oblivious to the power plays happening in this building. I know what you're doing, Cade said without preamble. The startup, the secret meetings, all of it. My fingers tightened on my purse strap. I don't know what you're talking about. Cut the act. He pulled out his phone, showing me photos. Me entering investor meetings, Marley carrying documents, John leaving my office. I'm not the enemy here, Destiny, but you need to be more careful. Are you blackmailing me? I'm warning you, Bruce knows something's happening in his market. He's hired private investigators. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your husband isn't as loyal as you think. Check his deleted emails. A friend. Who else knows? I demanded, showing Cade the message. Not from me. He ran a hand through his hair. But listen, Bruce didn't just strong-arm you with that prenup. He's done it before. To my wife, to other family members. He's got dirt on everyone. Why are you telling me this? Because someone needs to stop him. And you, he smiled slightly, you might actually be smart enough to do it. The elevator dinged, and Mark stepped out. Destiny? Cade? What's going on? Just bumped into each other, I said smoothly, holding up the lunch bag. Brought your favorite. Mark looked between us suspiciously. Father's looking for you, Cade. Something about the merger documents. Right. Cade headed for the elevator, but not before giving me a meaningful look. Be careful who you trust, Destiny. That evening, I sat in my home office, Mark's laptop open before me. His password had been easy to guess, our wedding date. The deleted emails loaded slowly, each one a potential landmine. Oh my God, I whispered, reading through threads between Mark and Bruce. They'd been discussing ways to keep me occupied with charity work, planning to set me up with meaningless projects to keep me from getting dangerous ideas. A soft knock startled me. Destiny? It was Mark. I quickly closed the laptop. Come in. He entered, looking troubled. Father wants us over for dinner tomorrow. Says it's important. Of course. I stood, kissing his cheek. Everything okay? Just business stuff. A new competitor's causing problems. Father's worried. I kept my face carefully blank. Anything I can do? Actually, he hesitated. Father thinks you might be helpful. Apparently, this competitor is a woman, someone who moves in social circles. He thought you might have heard something. My phone buzzed again. Another anonymous text. Bruce knows more than he's letting on. Watch your back. Destiny. Mark touched my arm. You seem distracted lately. Just tired. I forced a smile. Planning the gala is a lot of work. About that, he shifted uncomfortably. Father wants to move it up. Says we need to make a big announcement. What kind of announcement? Can't say yet, but it's big. Could change everything. After he left, I called Marley. We need to move faster. Bruce is planning something. Already on it, she replied. But you need to see this. Remember that dirt I mentioned? I found proof. Meeting in 20 at the usual place. I grabbed my keys, then stopped. A new email had just arrived from another anonymous account. Your company isn't the only thing at risk. Some secrets are worth killing for. My hand shook as I deleted it. The stakes were getting higher, and I wasn't sure who to trust anymore. Cade seemed genuine, but he was still Bruce's family. The anonymous messages could be warnings or traps. One thing was certain, Bruce was making his move, and I needed to be ready. The gala wasn't just going to be an announcement, it was going to be a battlefield. I texted Marley back. On my way. Time to show Bruce what happens when you underestimate the wrong woman. As I drove through the darkening city, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The game had changed. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about survival. The restaurant's private room felt like a pressure cooker as I sat across from Evangeline, my supposed rival in the tech industry. Bruce had no idea he'd just introduced me to my perfect smokescreen. So, Evangeline stirred her coffee. You're the mysterious wife I've heard so much about. Bruce seems quite interested in my company lately. And I'm interested in why you agreed to meet me. I slid a folder across the table. Especially given these numbers. She opened it, her eyes widening at the documents Cade had secretly provided. Where did you get these? Let's just say we have a mutual problem wearing expensive suits and wielding too much power. Bruce, she practically spat the name. He's been trying to force a hostile takeover of my company. These projections would give him everything he needs. Unless, I leaned forward, we help each other. The waiter arrived with our lunch, and we paused until he left. I could see the wheels turning in Evangeline's head as she processed my unspoken proposition. You're her, aren't you? She lowered her voice. The actual competitor Bruce is really worried about. I smiled. What would you say if I were? Before she could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Mark. Where are you? Father's called an emergency board meeting. Says it's about the mystery company. Looks like our time's up, I said, standing. Think about my offer. Bruce is planning something big at the gala, and we both know he doesn't play fair. Back at Russell Corp, I slipped into the board meeting viewing gallery just as Bruce started speaking. From my hidden vantage point, I could see everything while remaining unseen. Ladies and gentlemen, Bruce's voice boomed through the room. We have a crisis. This unknown company isn't just stealing our market share, they're using insider information. My heart raced as he pulled up familiar-looking projections. Not mine, Evangeline's. I propose an immediate acquisition of Stone Technologies, Bruce continued. We eliminate one threat while sending a message to anyone else thinking of challenging us. I texted Evangeline. Bruce took the bait. You know what to do. Seconds later, her reply came. Press release going out now. Let the games begin. On cue, phones around the boardroom started buzzing. Bruce's presentation froze as notifications poured in. Sir, his assistant burst in. Stone Technologies just announced a merger with Pacific Digital. They're out of our reach now. Bruce's face turned red. That's impossible. The numbers showed. The numbers were wrong. John spoke up, his voice steady. Maybe we should focus on our own company's vulnerabilities instead of chasing competitors. I smiled in my hidden spot. John had played his part perfectly, feeding Bruce exactly the information we wanted him to see. Later that evening, I was in my home office when Mark stormed in. Did you know about this? Father's furious. Know about what, honey? I looked up innocently from my gala planning notes. Evangeline Stone. She played us. Father's convinced there's a leak in the company. He ran his hands through his hair. He wants me to start investigating everyone, even family members. That sounds stressful. I stood, straightening his tie. Maybe you should distance yourself from it. Let your father handle his own battles. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing. I kissed his cheek. Just don't want you getting caught in the crossfire when things go wrong. His eyes narrowed. When? Don't you mean if? Before I could respond, both our phones chimed. Another anonymous message. The gala guest list includes someone who knows all of Bruce's secrets. Choose your allies carefully. What the hell? Mark stared at his screen. Who's sending these? Probably someone trying to cause trouble. I kept my voice calm while my mind raced. This wasn't part of my plan. You should show your father. No, he said slowly. No, I don't think I will. Something's not right here, Destiny, and I'm starting to wonder if you know more than you're saying. I met his gaze steadily. Do you really want to know the truth, Mark? About your father? About this company? Because once you do, there's no going back. He stepped back, conflict clear on his face. I need to think. After he left, I called Cade. Mark's wavering. We need to move faster. Already done, he replied. Just got word. Bruce's biggest client is pulling out tomorrow. He doesn't know yet. I looked at my calendar, where the gala date was circled in red. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to either secure my victory or lose everything. One more thing, Cade added. Watch out for Evangeline. She might be playing both sides. I hung up, staring at my reflection in the window. The perfect wife was cracking, revealing the CEO beneath. Soon, everyone would see exactly who I really was. And Bruce? Bruce would see it last of all. The Russell Corp lobby erupted in chaos as reporters swarmed the entrance. I stood in the background, watching Bruce try to manage the fallout from losing his biggest client. "This is a temporary setback," he announced, his usual confidence cracking slightly. Russell Corp remained stronger than ever. "Is it true the client cited ethical concerns?" a reporter shouted. "No comment," Bruce snapped, retreating toward the elevators. I followed at a distance, slipping into the same elevator just before the doors closed. We were alone. "Rough morning?" I asked innocently. Bruce's eyes narrowed. "Don't get smug, Destiny. This doesn't concern you." "Actually," I pulled out my phone, showing him an email. "It does. The country club board wants to know if we should postpone the gala, given the circumstances. The gala proceeds as planned." His voice turned to steel. "In fact, move it up to next week. I have a special announcement to make." The elevator stopped at his floor. Before exiting, he turned to me. "Oh, and Destiny, tell your friend Evangeline that playing both sides is a dangerous game." My blood ran cold. As soon as he left, I texted Marley. "He knows something. Meet me at the cafe." 20 minutes later, Marley slid into the booth across from me. "It's worse than we thought. Evangeline talked." "What?" "She met with Bruce this morning, offered to help him identify his real competition in exchange for a board seat." I gripped my coffee cup. "That backstabbing." "Destiny?" Mark's voice made me jump. He stood by our table, looking confused. "I thought you were planning the gala today." "Just taking a quick break," I said smoothly. "Want to join us?" "Actually, yes." He sat down, his expression serious. "We need to talk about father." Marley stood. "I should go." "No," Mark said. "Stay. I think you both need to hear this." He pulled out a USB drive. "I found something in father's private files about what really happened to my mother's company before she died." My heart raced. "Mark, he destroyed her," Mark's voice cracked. "She built something amazing, and he crushed it because he couldn't control her. Just like..." He looked at me meaningfully. "Just like he's trying to do to me?" Mark nodded slowly. "I saw the prenup, Destiny. The real one, not the version you signed. Father altered it after you signed. It's fraud." Marley gasped. I reached for Mark's hand. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to start my own investigation." He squeezed my hand. "I know about your company, Destiny. I've known for months." The cafe seemed to freeze around us. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I needed to be sure whose side I was on." He slid the USB drive to me. "Now I am. Father's going to announce a major restructuring at the gala. He's planning to seize control of all family assets, including any hidden companies he discovers." "He can't do that," Marley protested. "He can with these documents." Mark tapped the drive. "Unless someone stops him." My phone buzzed. A text from Cade. "Bruce called an emergency board meeting. John's been fired." "It's starting," I muttered, showing them the message. "There's more," Mark said. "Father's been moving money offshore. Millions. The company's nearly bankrupt, but he's been hiding it from everyone." I stood abruptly. "I need to make some calls." "Destiny," Mark caught my arm. "Whatever you're planning, I want to help." "It's dangerous." "I know." He smiled sadly. "But it's time someone stood up to him. Mother would have wanted that." Back at my office, I gathered my team via secure video call. John, newly fired but still holding key information. Cade, with his inside access. Marley, my most trusted ally. And now Mark, finally choosing a side. "Bruce moved the gala up for a reason," I explained. "He's desperate. The company's failing, and he's planning one last power grab." "The press is already suspicious," John added. "One more scandal could topple everything." "Then let's give them one," I said, pulling up documents on my screen. Bruce's offshore accounts, the fraudulent prenup, his history of destroying family businesses. Everything goes public at the gala. He'll fight back, Cade warned. Let him. I smiled grimly. I've got one card left to play, something not even Evangeline knows about. My phone lit up with another anonymous message. Bruce knows more than you think. The gala will be his triumph or his downfall. Choose wisely. I looked at my unlikely team of allies. We have 1 week to end this. Mark squeezed my shoulder. We're ready. But as everyone signed off, I wondered if we really were. Bruce had spent decades building his empire of lies. Taking it down would require perfect timing, absolute trust, and a willingness to risk everything. The gala wouldn't just be an event anymore. It would be a reckoning. 3 days before the gala, I found Bruce waiting in my home office. He sat in my chair, holding a familiar-looking file. Interesting reading material, he said, tapping the folder. For a housewife. I closed the door behind me. We both know I was never just a housewife. No, he stood slowly. You're something far more dangerous. A woman who thinks she can play in a man's world. Is that what you told Mark's mother before you destroyed her company? His face darkened. Careful, Destiny. You're treading on thin ice. Actually, I moved to my desk. I think you're the one who should be careful. I opened my laptop, turning it to face him. Offshore accounts, fraudulent documents, decades of systematic destruction of family businesses. The press would love this story. You're bluffing. Try me. I pulled up more files. Did you really think I wouldn't find out about the real prenup? The one you altered after I signed? A knock interrupted us. Mark entered, freezing when he saw his father. What's going on? Your wife, Bruce spat, is threatening me. No, I corrected. I'm promising you. The gala's in 3 days. Step down quietly, or everything goes public. Bruce laughed, but I caught the fear in his eyes. You'll destroy this family. You already did that, Mark said quietly. I found Mom's letters. Bruce's composure cracked. Your mother was weak. She would have ruined everything I built. Built? I scoffed. You mean stolen, manipulated, destroyed? My phone buzzed. Marley. Evangeline's talking to the press. Turn on the news now. I grabbed the remote, switching on the office TV. Evangeline stood at a podium, looking perfectly poised. And while I cannot name names at this time, I can confirm that major revelations about Russell Corp will be made at the upcoming gala. Bruce's face went pale. You conspired with her? No, I smiled. She conspired with me. Those documents you saw about her company, all part of the plan. You don't have the courage to destroy everything, Bruce challenged. Watch me. I pressed send on an email I'd prepared. I just released proof of your offshore accounts to the board. Consider it a preview of coming attractions. His phone immediately began ringing. He glanced at it, then back at me. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Mark stepped between us. Leave, Father, while you still have a choice. After Bruce stormed out, Mark turned to me. Are you okay? No, I admitted, but I will be. Did you secure the evidence from his office? Everything's here. He patted his briefcase. Cade's got copies too, just in case. My phone rang. John calling. Bruce just called an emergency shareholder meeting for tomorrow morning. He's trying to force a vote before the gala. Let him try, I said. We've got the proxy votes locked up, thanks to you and Cade. After hanging up, I found Mark staring at me. What? He shook his head. I can't believe I never saw it before. How brilliant you are. How much like my mother. Mark, no, let me finish. I was a coward, letting him control everything, letting him do to you what he did to her. He took my hands. Whatever happens next, I'm with you. Another text buzzed through, anonymous again. Bruce has one last card to play. Watch out for the silent partner. Silent partner? Mark frowned. What silent partner? A horrible realization hit me. The gala venue, who owns it? Mark's eyes widened. Father's old friend Patrick. Why? I was already dialing Marley. Get the venue changed. Now. Bruce is going to try to stop the gala entirely. On it, she replied. But Destiny, there's something else. Remember those documents about Bruce's past? There's a name that keeps coming up. Someone who helped him take down your mother-in-law's company. Who? Patrick. I looked at Mark, seeing the same understanding dawn on his face. Bruce hadn't just been building an empire. He'd been building a network of conspirators, each one helping him destroy anyone who threatened his control. The gala's not enough, I realized. We need to expose everyone. It'll cause a scandal that'll rock the whole business community, Mark warned. Good. I started typing rapidly. Let it burn. Let all their lies burn. My phone lit up with another anonymous message. Tomorrow's shareholder meeting is a trap. Bruce knows about the proxy votes. Be ready. I showed Mark the message. Still with me? He kissed me softly. Always. But Destiny, whatever happens tomorrow, I know. I squeezed his hand. No going back now. The next 24 hours would either see Bruce's empire fall or everything I'd built crumble to dust. And somewhere in the shadows, Patrick waited, Bruce's silent partner in a decades-long game of destruction. The real battle was just beginning. The gala ballroom hummed with tension as I adjusted my midnight blue gown. Reporters lined the entrance, their cameras flashing like lightning before a storm. Bruce stood at the podium, looking confident despite everything. Too confident. Something's wrong, Marley whispered, appearing beside me. Patrick's men are at every exit. Doesn't matter. I checked my phone one last time. Everything's in place. Bruce tapped the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. Tonight marks a new chapter for Russell Corp. I caught Mark's eye across the room. He nodded slightly, phone ready. Before we begin, Bruce continued, I'd like to address the recent rumors about our company. They are, of course, completely false. In fact, the lights went out. When they came back on seconds later, the giant screens behind Bruce weren't showing his prepared presentation. Instead, documents began scrolling. Bank statements, emails, contracts. 2 decades of corruption exposed in high definition. What is this? Bruce demanded, but his microphone had gone dead. Mine, however, worked perfectly. The truth, Bruce. My voice rang through the ballroom as I walked toward the stage. Every dirty deal, every destroyed company, every life you've ruined, all of it, documented and verified. Security, Bruce shouted. They're not your security anymore, Cade called out, emerging from the crowd. The board voted an hour ago. You're out, Bruce. Patrick surged forward. This is illegal. You can't. Actually, we can. John stepped up, holding a tablet. Especially with your signed confession. Patrick's face went white. I never signed anything. No, I smiled. But your wife did, after we showed her proof of your affair with her sister. Amazing what people will reveal when they're angry. Reporters were going crazy, cameras flashing, questions flying. Bruce grabbed my arm. You think you've won? He hissed. I still own everything. The prenup is void, Mark interrupted, joining us on stage. Because you committed fraud when you altered it after signing. Remember, Father, I found the original. Bruce's grip tightened. You ungrateful... Let her go. Evangeline's voice cut through the chaos. She strode forward, phone recording. Unless you want assault added to your charges. He released me, looking around wildly as his world crumbled. Board members were already talking to the press. Patrick was being led away by security. The screens kept scrolling, showing proof of every crime, every manipulation. You don't understand, Bruce pleaded, his composure finally breaking. I built this company. No, I corrected him. You stole this company. Just like you stole Mark's mother's company. Just like you tried to steal my dreams. I turned to address the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce myself properly. I'm Destiny, CEO of Martinez Technologies, the company that's been outperforming Russell Corp for the past year. The room erupted. Bruce lunged for me, but Mark intercepted him. It's over, Father, Mark said firmly. The board has voted. The police are waiting outside. Walk out with dignity or be dragged out. Your choice. Bruce straightened his tie, his mask of control slipping back into place. You'll regret this. All of you. No, I said softly. The only regret here is that it took so long to stop you. As security escorted Bruce out, reporters swarmed the stage. Questions flew from every direction. Did Bruce really destroy his daughter-in-law's company? How long has Phoenix Technologies been operating in secret? Mr. Russell, did you know about your wife's company? Mark took my hand, facing the cameras. My wife built something amazing while fighting against systematic oppression and manipulation. She's not just a CEO, she's a revolution. Marley appeared with champagne. The board wants to talk to you both. They're voting on new leadership in 10 minutes. I turned to Mark. Are you ready for this? Together, he smiled, we can rebuild everything. The right way this time. The next hour passed in a blur of interviews, congratulations, and board meetings. By midnight, it was official. Mark and I would co-lead the merged companies, with a board selected for ethics and innovation, rather than loyalty to Bruce. As the crowd thinned, I found a moment alone on the balcony. My phone buzzed one last time. The anonymous number. Justice served. Your mother-in-law would be proud. M. I smiled, finally understanding who had been helping us all along. Mark's mother wasn't dead as Bruce had claimed. She'd been watching, waiting, helping us expose the truth. Destiny. Mark joined me outside. The press wants one more statement. I looked at my husband, seeing him clearly for the first time, not as Bruce's son, but as his mother's child, strong, ethical, ready to right old wrongs. Let's give them something to remember, I said, taking his hand. Together, we walked back into the light, leaving Bruce's empire of shadows behind us. The game was over. Truth had won. And somewhere out there, a woman who'd lost everything was finally seeing justice served. The morning sun streamed through my office window, my real office, not the hidden one in the guest house. On my desk, newspapers splashed headlines about Bruce's arrest and the corporate merger. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since the gala. Your 9 o'clock is here, my assistant announced through the intercom. Send her in. The door opened, and I stood, my heart racing. A woman with Mark's eyes entered, elegant, poised, and very much alive. Margaret, I breathed. Hello, Destiny. She smiled, the same smile I'd seen in old photos. I believe we have a lot to discuss. We sat in the comfortable chairs by the window rather than at my desk. Professional barriers seemed pointless now. The anonymous texts, I said. That was you. Among other things. She pulled out a familiar USB drive. I've spent years gathering evidence against Bruce, waiting for someone strong enough to use it. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Bruce's threats weren't empty. He had proof of certain questionable decisions I made trying to save my company. If I surfaced, he would have destroyed more than just me. A knock interrupted us. Mark entered, freezing when he saw his mother. Mum? The reunion that followed brought tears to my eyes. Mother and son embracing, years of separation dissolving in moments. I'm so sorry, Margaret whispered to Mark. I wanted to tell you, but I understand now, he said. After seeing what Father did to Destiny, I understand everything. My phone buzzed. Marley. Bruce is requesting a meeting. Says he has one last deal to offer. I showed the message to Margaret and Mark. Go, Margaret said firmly. End this properly. The prison visiting room was cold and stark. Bruce sat waiting, orange jumpsuit replacing his designer suits, but his arrogance remained intact. Destiny, he nodded as I sat. I see Margaret's resurfaced. Your last play failed, Bruce. What do you want? To make a deal. I have other accounts, other resources. Help reduce my sentence, and half of it is yours. I laughed. You still don't get it, do you? This was never about money. Then what? He leaned forward. Revenge? Power? Don't pretend you're better than me. No, Bruce. This was about justice. For Margaret, for every woman you've tried to control, for every dream you've crushed. Dreams? He scoffed. I built an empire. And now you'll watch from in here as we transform it into something better. I stood. Goodbye, Bruce. Wait, his composure cracked. Please, Mark's all I have left. You lost Mark the moment you tried to make him choose between his mother's memory and your control. I turned back at the door. By the way, I'm pregnant. Your grandchild will never know you existed. Back at the office, I found Cade waiting with Marley and John. Board approved the new structure, Cade reported. You and Mark as co-CEOs, Margaret heading the charitable foundation. And Evangeline, I asked, agreed to the merger terms. She's taking Asia operations. My office door opened again. Patrick's wife entered, holding more documents. Found these in his private safe, she said. Thought you might want them for the prosecution. Thank you, Sandra. I took the files. The foundation's legal team will handle your divorce pro bono. She smiled tearfully. Thank you for helping me find my courage. As the day wound down, I found myself back in my office with Mark and Margaret. The press wants interviews, Mark said. Stories of redemption, women in business, corporate reform. Let them wait, Margaret replied. Family comes first. Isn't that right, Destiny? I touched my stomach, still flat, but holding our future. Yes, family first, but on our terms this time. Speaking of terms, Mark pulled out an envelope. I had our lawyers draw something up. Inside was a new contract, not a prenup, but a partnership agreement. Equal shares, equal power, equal respect. No more secrets, Mark said. No more hidden agendas. No more hiding, I agreed, signing the document. Margaret took it next, signing as witness. Now, about my grandchild. We laughed, the sound echoing through an office that had seen too many dark deals and not enough joy. My phone buzzed one last time. Marley had sent a photo of Bruce's empty office being transformed into a women's mentorship center. Ready to build something new? Mark asked, taking my hand. I looked at my family. Not the one I'd married into, but the one we'd forged through truth and trust. Margaret, who'd lost everything but gained it back through patience and courage. Mark, who'd chosen love over power. Our unborn child, who would inherit a legacy of strength rather than manipulation. Yes, I said, let's build something extraordinary. Together, we walk toward the future. Not as Russell Corp's heirs, but as architects of change. Bruce's empire had fallen, but from its ashes, we would rise stronger, wiser, and unafraid. The game was over. Life was just beginning.
I should have known something was wrong when I saw my sister's smirk. The same smirk she'd worn since we were kids, right before she'd take something that belonged to me. My name is Mila, and this was supposed to be my perfect 28th birthday celebration. The restaurant's private room buzzed with conversation and laughter. Crystal glasses clinked, and the warm glow of pendant lights cast everyone in a flattering light. Even my boyfriend Tucker seemed extra attentive, though he kept checking his phone every few minutes. Speech! Speech! My mother Kendra's voice rose above the chatter. She stood, wine glass in hand, her designer dress catching the light. I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate our beautiful Mila's birthday. I smiled, squeezing Tucker's hand under the table. He squeezed back, but something felt off. His palm was sweaty. Actually, my sister Serenity's voice cut through the moment like a knife. Tucker and I have an announcement to make. The room fell silent. I watched, frozen, as Serenity stood up, her perfectly manicured hand resting on Tucker's shoulder. He rose beside her, avoiding my gaze. We're engaged. Serenity thrust out her left hand, where my grandmother's diamond ring, the one Tucker and I had discussed just last month, sparkled on her finger. The room erupted in confused murmurs. My father Devin's fork clattered against his plate. What's going on here? Tucker and I have been in love for months, Serenity announced, her voice dripping with false sweetness. We didn't want to hurt anyone, but we couldn't deny our feelings anymore. I sat there, my birthday cake untouched in front of me, as my world imploded in slow motion. "Mila," Tucker finally spoke, his voice strained. "I'm sorry. It just happened." "Just happened?" I found my voice, standing so quickly my chair scraped against the floor. "Things don't just happen, Tucker. You make choices." Vicente, our family friend and my father's business partner, stepped forward. "This is completely inappropriate. It's Mila's birthday, for God's sake." "Oh, please." Serenity rolled her eyes. "Mila always gets everything. The attention, the praise, Daddy's approval. Maybe it's time she learned she can't have it all." Our mother gasped. "Serenity, that's enough." But Serenity wasn't finished. She wrapped her arm around Tucker's waist, that familiar smirk playing on her lips. "Besides, Tucker and I make much more sense together. We're both ambitious, forward-thinking. Mila's always been content with mediocrity." The room fell dead silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for my reaction. My hands trembled, but I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me cry. "You know what, Serenity?" I met her gaze steadily. "You're right about one thing. This makes perfect sense. You two deserve each other." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, but turned back one last time. "Oh, and Tucker, that ring you're so proud of giving her? Grandmother left it to me in her will. So technically, you just gave my sister stolen property." Tucker's face paled. Serenity's smirk faltered for the first time. "Mila, wait!" my father called after me, but I was already pushing through the restaurant's main doors into the cool night air. Vicente caught up with me in the parking lot. "Let me drive you home." "I'm fine," I insisted, fumbling with my car keys. "You're shaking," he observed quietly. "And you've had wine. Let me help." I relented, handing him my keys. As we drove in silence, my phone buzzed repeatedly with messages. Probably my parents, maybe even Tucker trying to explain. I turned it off. "You handled that with incredible grace," Vicente said finally. I laughed bitterly. "Grace? I just had my birthday ruined, my boyfriend stolen, and my sister." I trailed off, remembering something. "Vicente, last week when you mentioned those discrepancies in the company accounts, was Serenity involved with those reports?" He glanced at me sharply. "Why do you ask?" "Because my sister just proved she's capable of anything." I stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past. "And I think it's time someone looked closer at exactly what she's been up to." Vicente was quiet for a moment. "The financial records are in my office. We could start there." For the first time that evening, I felt something other than hurt and humiliation. I felt purpose. "Yes," I nodded slowly. "We could start there." As Vicente pulled up to my apartment, I caught my reflection in the window. I didn't see a victim. I saw someone ready to fight back. Serenity might think she'd won tonight, but she'd forgotten one crucial thing about me. I always finish what I start. And this was just the beginning. The morning after my disaster of a birthday, I walked into my parents' house to collect the gifts I'd left behind. I hadn't expected anyone to be there, but I found my mother sitting at the kitchen island, staring into her coffee cup. "Honey," she jumped up when she saw me. "I've been calling you all night." "My phone died," I lied, reaching for the stack of presents on the counter. "We need to talk about what happened." She grabbed my arm gently. "Your father and I had no idea about Tucker and Serenity. We're just as shocked as you are." "Are you?" I pulled away. "Because Serenity's been pulling stunts like this since we were kids. Remember my prom date? My college graduation party? She always has to make everything about her." "That's different, Mila. This is worse." I laughed. "Yeah, it is. But you and Dad will probably forgive her anyway. You always do." The front door opened and Serenity's voice floated in. "Mom, I brought breakfast." I turned to leave, but Serenity blocked the doorway, holding a bakery bag. She was wearing one of my old sweaters, one that had mysteriously disappeared from my closet months ago. "Oh, Mila," she said, feigning surprise. "I didn't expect to see you here." "Nice sweater," I replied coldly. "Looks familiar." She shrugged, that irritating smirk playing on her lips. "Tucker always said it looked better on me anyway." Before I could respond, my father walked in. "Girls, enough. We need to handle this like adults." "Handle what?" Serenity set down the bakery bag. "Tucker and I are in love. Mila will get over it." "Like you got over me being Dad's favorite?" The words slipped out before I could stop them. Serenity's face darkened. "At least I earned my position at the company. Everyone knows Dad only gave you that junior executive role because—" "That's enough." Dad slammed his hand on the counter. "Both of you sit down, now." We sat, glaring at each other across the kitchen island like we were teenagers again. "Devin," Mom started, but Dad held up his hand. "I just got off the phone with Vicente," he said, looking between us. "He mentioned some concerning issues with the company's financial reports." I watched Serenity's face carefully. For a split second, her composure cracked. "What kind of issues?" I asked innocently. "Nothing important," Serenity cut in quickly. "Just some filing errors. Tucker and I already fixed them." "Tucker?" Dad frowned. "Since when does Tucker have access to our financial records?" "He's been helping me streamline some processes," Serenity said smoothly. "He has experience in corporate finance, remember?" I remembered something else, Tucker's mysterious phone calls, his late nights at the office with Serenity. It all started making sense. "Dad," I leaned forward, "maybe we should have an external audit." "Don't be ridiculous," Serenity snapped. "We don't need outsiders poking around our family business. Besides, you barely understand how the finance department works." My phone buzzed. A text from Vicente. "Found something. Meet me at the office ASAP." I stood up. "You're right, Serenity. I don't understand finance like you do, but I understand loyalty and karma." "Is that a threat?" She stood too, her voice sharp. "No," I smiled, channeling her own smirk. "Just an observation." As I walked out, I heard her muttering to our parents about how unstable I was acting, but I caught Dad's troubled expression in the reflection of the window. For the first time, he looked uncertain about his perfect younger daughter. Outside, I bumped into Tucker getting out of his car. He was carrying flowers, probably for Serenity. "Mila, wait," he called out. "Can we talk?" I turned slowly. "About what? How long you've been sleeping with my sister? Or about the company's financial records you've been helping her with?" His face paled. "What are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "And so does Vicente." Tucker's hand tightened around the flowers, crushing their stems. "You don't want to do this, Mila. Some things are better left alone. You should have thought about that before you gave my grandmother's ring to my sister." As I drove to meet Vicente, I replayed Tucker's reaction in my head. He wasn't just nervous, he was scared. And scared people make mistakes. My phone buzzed again. "Vicente, bring your laptop. You're going to want to see these emails." I pressed the accelerator harder. Serenity might have taken my boyfriend and tried to humiliate me, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd left a paper trail, and I was about to follow it all the way to the truth. Vicente's office was a mess of papers when I arrived. He sat hunched over his computer, his usually pristine desk covered in financial statements and printed emails. "Look at this," he said without looking up. 3 separate wire transfers to offshore accounts in the past 6 months, all authorized by Serenity, all just under the threshold that would require board approval. I leaned over his shoulder, scanning the numbers. "That's over $500,000. And that's just what I found so far. He clicked through several emails. These communications between Serenity and Tucker go back almost a year. They were planning something long before they went public with their relationship. My stomach churned as I read their exchanges, the casual way they discussed the transfers, the inside jokes, the subtle references to keeping me in the dark. Wait, I pointed at the screen. Go back to that last email. Vicente scrolled up. There it was, an email from Tucker to Serenity. Once the merger goes through, we'll have full control. Em won't know what hit her. Neither will your dad. Merger? I frowned. What merger? Vicente pulled out a stack of documents. I found these in Serenity's office after hours. She's been negotiating with Stellar Corp to sell controlling interest in your family's company. The money she's been transferring, it's her golden parachute. She can't do that without Dad's approval, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I remembered something. Unless she has power of attorney, Vicente finished, which your father gave her 3 months ago when he was in the hospital for his heart surgery. That was temporary. I grabbed the documents, scanning them frantically. It was only supposed to last during his recovery. The paperwork was never reversed. Vicente's voice was grim. Legally, she still has authority to make these decisions. I sank into a chair, my mind racing. Tucker's mother sits on Stellar Corp's board. That's why he got involved with Serenity, to facilitate the takeover. And to keep you distracted, Vicente added. They knew you'd eventually notice the discrepancies in the accounts. My phone buzzed. A text from Serenity. Stay away from the office. You're embarrassing yourself. She knows I'm here. I showed Vicente the message. Good. He started gathering the documents. Let her worry, but we need to move fast. The merger vote is scheduled for next week's board meeting. We need copies of everything, I said, pulling out my laptop, and we need to find out who else is involved. For the next few hours, we dug deeper. Every document we uncovered revealed more betrayal. Serenity hadn't just stolen my boyfriend. She was trying to steal our family's legacy. A knock at the door made us both jump. It was Sarah, Tucker's mother. I thought I might find you here, she said, closing the door behind her. We need to talk. Vicente moved protectively closer to his computer screen, but Sarah held up her hands. I'm not here to stop you, she said. I'm here to help. Tucker told me everything last night, about the merger, the offshore accounts, all of it. I've already resigned from Stellar Corp's board. Why? I asked suspiciously. Because what they're doing is wrong, she said simply, and because I raised my son better than this, or at least I thought I did. She pulled out her phone, showing us emails between Tucker and Stellar Corp's CEO. They're planning to strip the company for parts once they have control. Hundreds of people will lose their jobs. My hands shook as I forwarded the emails to myself. Does my father know any of this? Serenity's kept him completely in the dark, Sarah replied. She's been intercepting his business correspondence, claiming she's protecting him from stress during his recovery. We have to tell him. I stood up, but Vicente caught my arm. Not yet, he cautioned. We need more proof, something concrete that Serenity can't talk her way out of. I might be able to help with that, Sarah said. Tucker keeps a detailed record of all their transactions on his personal laptop. He's not as clever as he thinks he is. I know his passwords. I looked at her carefully. Why are you really helping us? Because I've watched Serenity manipulate and scheme her way through life, just like her mother warned me she would. Her mother? I stared at her. You knew our mother before? Sarah's expression softened. Kendra isn't your biological mother, Mila. Your real mother was my best friend. She died when you were a baby, and your father married Kendra a year later. Serenity is your half-sister. The room spun slightly. Does Serenity know? Oh, she knows. Sarah's voice was hard. She's always known, and she's always resented you for it. I sat back down, my world shifting once again. But this time, instead of pain, I felt clarity. Finally, everything made sense. Serenity's lifelong jealousy, her need to take everything that was mine. Okay, I said, turning back to the computer. Let's finish this. All of it. The family dinner that night felt like sitting on a powder keg. Mom, no, Kendra, had insisted we all come together to sort things out. I arrived last, armed with a folder of evidence tucked into my bag and Sarah's revelations burning in my mind. Finally, Serenity said from her seat next to Tucker, we can start eating. Some of us have work tomorrow. Yes, I smiled tightly. Important wire transfers to arrange, I'm sure. Tucker's fork clattered against his plate. Dad cleared his throat. Girls, please, can we have one peaceful dinner? Of course, Daddy, Serenity's voice dripped honey. I actually have exciting news about the company. The board meeting next week. About that, I cut in, pulling out a document from my bag. Did you know Serenity still has your power of attorney, Dad? The table fell silent. Dad frowned. That was temporary during my recovery. The paperwork was never reversed. I slid the document across the table. Interesting timing, considering the upcoming merger vote. Serenity's face went white. You've been snooping through my office? Merger? Dad picked up the paper. What merger? It's nothing. Tucker jumped in. Just preliminary discussions. With Stellar Corp, I finished. Where your former mother sits on the board, or did, until she resigned today. Tucker's head snapped up. What? Mila, stop this, Kendra pleaded. You're just upset about Tucker and Serenity's engagement. Am I? I pulled out more papers. These offshore account transfers say differently. $500,000, Serenity. Where's the money going? That's confidential company business. Serenity snapped, but her hands were shaking. Devin. Kendra touched Dad's arm. Maybe we should discuss this in private. No, I stood up. No more privacy, no more secrets, like the secret that Kendra isn't my real mother. The room exploded. Dad dropped the papers. Kendra burst into tears. Tucker looked like he wanted to disappear. How dare you? Serenity screamed, standing up. You always have to ruin everything. Me? I laughed incredulously. You've been sabotaging me my entire life because you couldn't handle that Dad loved another woman before your mother. Enough! Dad's voice thundered. He turned to Serenity. Is this merger deal true? It's what's best for the company, she said defensively. You're not thinking clearly since your surgery. Don't you dare! Dad's voice shook with anger. Don't you dare use my health as an excuse. Show me the transfer records, now. I can explain everything, Tucker started, but Dad cut him off. You, he pointed at Tucker, don't speak. I trusted you both with my company, with my family. Dad, I said quietly, there's more. The merger isn't just a takeover. They're planning to dismantle the company. Hundreds of people will lose their jobs. Serenity lunged for my bag, but I was faster. Papers scattered across the table. Emails, bank statements, merger documents. It's all there, I said. Every transaction, every email, every lie. You stupid bitch, Serenity hissed. You have no idea what you've done. Actually, I do. I pulled out my phone, showing her the screen. I've been recording this entire conversation, and I've already sent copies of everything to the SEC. The color drained from Tucker's face. The Securities and Exchange Commission? You can't? I can, and I did. I turned to Dad. I'm sorry you had to find out like this. About everything. Dad sat heavily in his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Kendra, did you know about Serenity using the power of attorney? Kendra wouldn't meet his eyes. She said it was temporary, just until things were arranged. Arranged? Dad's voice was deadly quiet. My company, my employees, my family, all arranged behind my back? Serenity must have seen something change in Dad's expression because her voice turned desperate. Daddy, please. I was trying to protect you. The company needs new direction. The only direction you're concerned with is the one leading to your offshore accounts, I cut in. How long have you been planning this? Since Dad's surgery or since you started sleeping with my boyfriend? You never deserved, Tucker, Serenity spat, or your position in the company. You're not even a real part of this family. That's where you're wrong. Dad stood up slowly. Mila is more my daughter right now than you've ever been. The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. Through the dining room window, I could see Vicente getting out of his car, accompanied by two people in suits. That would be the SEC investigators, I said quietly. They have some questions about those wire transfers. Serenity grabbed her purse and ran for the back door, but Tucker caught her arm. Don't, he said, his voice breaking. It's over. For the first time in my life, I saw real fear in my sister's eyes, and I felt nothing but relief. The next morning, I sat in Vicente's office, watching the investigators box up files from Serenity's computer. The questioning had gone on until 3 a.m., and my head was still spinning from all the revelations. Miss Reynolds? One of the investigators approached. We found something you should see. He placed a laptop in front of me, Tucker's personal computer, courtesy of Sarah. These emails go back further than we thought, much further. I scrolled through the messages, my stomach dropping with each one. The earliest dated back 2 years, before Tucker and I had even started dating. He pursued you deliberately, Vicente said quietly, reading over my shoulder. They planned it all. Getting close to you was his way into the company. A knock at the door made us look up. Tucker stood there, looking haggard. Can we talk? Alone? The investigator nodded. 5 minutes. We'll be right outside. Once they left, Tucker sat across from me. I need you to understand that you never loved me. I kept my voice steady. That I was just part of your long con with my sister. It wasn't like that. He ran his hands through his hair. At first, yes, Serenity approached me at a business conference. She knew about my mother's position at Stellar Corp, knew I had experience in corporate takeovers. She offered me a percentage if I helped her gain control of the company. And dating me was part of the deal? Getting close to you meant access to company information. But Mila, he leaned forward, my feelings for you became real. I laughed bitterly. Real enough to sleep with my sister? Real enough to give her my grandmother's ring? Serenity had leverage over me. She threatened to expose my involvement if I didn't play along. The engagement announcement, that wasn't planned. She blindsided me too. Save it, I stood up. The SEC has everything they need. You're going to prison, Tucker, both of you. Unless you help me. His voice turned urgent. I can testify against Serenity, tell them everything, but I need you to speak on my behalf. Tell them I cooperated. You want me to help you? I stared at him incredulously. After everything? Think about it, he pressed. Serenity's the mastermind. She's the one who stole from the company. I'm just a willing accomplice, I finished. A liar? A thief? I still care about you, Mila. No, I said quietly. You care about saving yourself. There's a difference. The door opened and Sarah walked in. Tucker jumped up. Mom? Sit down, she said coldly. The investigators need your statement about the Cayman Islands accounts. Tucker's face crumpled. You told them about those? I told them everything. Sarah's voice shook. Including your involvement in the Maxwell scandal last year. Did you think I wouldn't find out about that too? I looked between them. What Maxwell scandal? Another company he helped destroy, Sarah said. Another family he betrayed. This isn't his first time, Mila. It's just the first time he got caught. Tucker slumped in his chair. Mom, please, don't. Sarah turned away. The investigators are ready for you now. As Tucker was let out, my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Serenity's confessing. Come to the main office. Go, Vicente said. I'll handle things here. I found Dad in his office, looking exhausted. Through the glass walls, I could see Serenity sitting with two investigators, mascara streaking her face as she talked. She's telling them everything, Dad said. The merger plan, the stolen funds, all of it. She claims it was revenge. Revenge for what? For loving you more. He turned to me. For giving you opportunities she felt she deserved. For keeping the truth about your mother from her. Did you? I asked. Love me more? I loved you differently, he said carefully. Your mother, your real mother, she was the love of my life. When she died, a part of me died too. Kendra helped me survive that, helped me raise you. But Serenity, she always knew she was living in the shadow of a ghost. Through the glass, Serenity looked up and met my eyes. For a moment, I saw something there, not hatred or anger, but a deep, consuming sadness. She's going to prison, isn't she? I asked quietly. Dad nodded. The evidence is overwhelming. Tucker too, probably. The SEC is already talking to prosecutors. My phone buzzed again. A message from Vicente. Tucker's singing like a bird. You need to see his full confession. Dad? I touched his arm. There's more to come out. Are you ready for that? He smiled sadly. I'm ready for the truth. All of it. No more secrets in this family. I looked back at Serenity, still talking to the investigators. She'd taken everything from me, my boyfriend, my trust, nearly our family's company. But in the end, she'd lost everything too. And somehow, that didn't feel like victory at all. The board meeting room was packed. Every seat was filled, and people stood along the walls. News of the scandal had spread fast, and everyone wanted answers. I sat between Vicente and Dad, watching as our company's attorneys laid out the evidence. The total amount diverted to offshore accounts exceeds $800,000, the lead attorney announced, clicking through his presentation. Additionally, we've uncovered evidence of insider trading, corporate espionage, and attempted fraud related to the proposed Stellar Corp merger. Murmurs rippled through the room. I noticed several board members shooting accusatory glances at each other. Ms. Reynolds, one of the senior board members, addressed me directly. You were the one who uncovered this conspiracy. Why didn't you come forward sooner? Because, I stood up, my voice steady, I needed to understand the full scope of the deception. This wasn't just about stolen money. It was about betraying everything this company stands for. The door opened, and Sarah walked in with a USB drive. I have Tucker's full confession, she announced, including details about other board members who were involved. The room erupted. 3 board members immediately stood up and headed for the door, but security blocked their exit. Sit down, Dad's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone stays until we get to the truth. Sarah plugged in the drive, and Tucker's face appeared on the screen. He looked terrible, his usual polished appearance gone. The plan started 2 years ago. His recorded confession began. Serenity approached me after learning about Stellar Corp's interest in acquiring the company. She knew they wanted to break it up and sell off the pieces. Board members Marcus, Janet, and Philip were already on board. The 3 who had tried to leave sank back into their chairs, faces pale. We orchestrated the entire thing, Tucker continued. My relationship with Mila was meant to be a distraction. The power of attorney during Mr. Reynolds' surgery was our opportunity. Serenity had been embezzling funds as a safety net, but the real money would come from the merger. I watched the board members' reactions. Some looked shocked, others guilty, and a few seemed oddly satisfied, like they'd suspected something all along. What they didn't count on, Vicente stood up, was that some of us were watching. We've been gathering evidence for months. The SEC now has everything. This is outrageous, Marcus sputtered. You can't prove. Actually, Sarah interrupted. We can. Tucker provided bank records showing payments to all three of you. The SEC is very interested in those transactions. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Years of trust, decades of business relationships, all destroyed by greed and deception. There's one more thing, I said, pulling out a final document. The merger vote was scheduled for today. Instead, I'm proposing something different. I handed copies to each board member. A restructuring plan, one that protects our employees, maintains our company's integrity, and implements new oversight measures to prevent anything like this from happening again. You don't have the authority, Janet began. Actually, she does, Dad cut in. As of this morning, Mila is our new chief operating officer, and I trust her judgment more than ever. The vote was quick and decisive, with 3 board members facing criminal charges and the others eager to distance themselves from the scandal. My proposal passed unanimously. As the room cleared out, Vicente touched my arm. There's someone here to see you. In the hallway, Serenity stood between 2 federal agents. She'd been allowed to come to the meeting before being taken into custody. Can we have a moment? I asked the agents. They nodded, stepping back but keeping watch. Congratulations, Serenity said quietly. You won. You got everything you wanted. This isn't about winning, I replied. It's about doing what's right. Right? She laughed bitterly. Was it right for Dad to hide the truth about your mother all these years? Was it right for him to always put you first? He didn't put me first. He put the company first. You're the one who made it personal. She looked away. I found letters, between Dad and your mother, the way he wrote about her. He never loved my mother that way, never loved me that way. So you tried to destroy everything he built? I tried to take what I deserved, she whispered. But I failed, just like I failed at everything else. The agent stepped forward. It was time. Serenity, I called as they led her away. For what it's worth, I'm sorry you felt so unloved that you had to do this. She paused, looking back with tears in her eyes. For what it's worth, I'm sorry too. For everything. I watched them lead her away, feeling the weight of the past few days, the past few years really, finally starting to lift. Ready to get to work? Vicente asked, holding the door to our offices open. I nodded, straightening my shoulders. More than ready. We have a company to rebuild. 6 months later, I stood in the courtroom, watching as Tucker and Serenity received their sentences. The judge's voice echoed through the silent room. Mr. Tucker Watson, this court sentences you to 5 years in federal prison for conspiracy, fraud, and securities violations. Tucker's mother, Sarah, sat stoically in the front row as her son was led away in handcuffs. He didn't look back. Ms. Serenity Reynolds, the judge continued, taking into account your cooperation with investigators and your guilty plea, this court sentences you to 3 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. Serenity turned to look at us before they took her away. Dad reached for my hand, squeezing it tight. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Mr. Reynolds, how does it feel knowing your own daughter tried to destroy your company? Ms. Reynolds, what's next for the company after this scandal? Vicente appeared, helping us push through the crowd. No comments today. Please refer to our official statement. We escaped to a nearby cafe, where Kendra waited. The past months had aged her, but she sat straighter now, unburdened by secrets. It's done, Dad said, sliding into the booth. All of it. Not quite. I pulled out an envelope. The DNA results came today. I thought, I thought we should all be here. After learning about my biological mother, I decided to confirm everything through testing. The envelope had been sitting unopened on my desk all morning. Are you sure you want to know? Kendra asked softly. I need to, I replied. No more questions, no more doubts. I opened the envelope with trembling fingers. The results confirmed everything. Dad was my father, but Kendra wasn't my biological mother. Science proving what secrets and lies had hidden for so long. I have something for you. Dad reached into his briefcase. I should have given you these years ago. He handed me a bundle of letters, tied with a faded ribbon. These were from your mother, Elizabeth. She wrote them to you before she died, one for every birthday until you turned 21. I remember those letters, Kendra said quietly. You used to read them every night. Dad nodded. Until Serenity found them when she was 12. She was so angry, so hurt. That's when everything started to change. Why didn't you tell me the truth? I asked, touching the letters gently. Because I was a coward, he admitted. Because Kendra had been such a wonderful mother to you, and I didn't want to hurt either of you. I thought I was protecting everyone, but instead, the secrets poisoned everything, Kendra finished. Vicente, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. The company press release goes out tomorrow. We're announcing the new board structure and the employee protection plan. People are calling it a model of corporate reformation. Thanks to you, Dad smiled at me. You didn't just save the company, Mila. You made it better. My phone buzzed. A message from Sarah. Tucker's being transferred tonight. He asked to see you. No, I said firmly, showing them the message. Some chapters need to stay closed. Speaking of closed chapters, Vicente pulled out a small box. This was recovered from evidence. Inside was my grandmother's ring, the one Tucker had given Serenity. It sparkled under the cafe lights, beautiful but somehow tainted by everything that had happened. What should I do with it? I asked. Start fresh, Kendra suggested. Sell it, donate it, whatever feels right. Sometimes letting go is the strongest thing you can do. I closed the box. I think I know exactly what to do with it. Later that afternoon, I visited the children's hospital where my biological mother had worked as a nurse. The ring would fund a new pediatric program in her name, something good coming from all the pain. As I left the hospital, I checked my messages, one from Serenity, sent through her lawyer. I found my own letters today, the ones I wrote to Mom after she died, angry about you, about Dad, about everything. I finally understand. I wasn't fighting you. I was fighting myself. I'm sorry it took losing everything to see that. I sat in my car, reading the message again. The anger I'd carried for so long felt lighter somehow, transformed into something closer to understanding. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe someday. My phone rang, Vicente calling about tomorrow's board meeting. Time to get back to work, to continue rebuilding what had been broken. But this time, we'd build it on truth, not secrets, on strength, not fear. As I drove back to the office, I thought about the letters waiting at home. 21 birthday messages from a mother I barely remembered, but whose love had somehow helped shape me into someone strong enough to face all of this. Sometimes the greatest acts of love are the ones we don't understand until years later, and sometimes the hardest battles we fight lead us exactly where we need to be. The autumn breeze rustled through the cemetery as I placed fresh flowers on my biological mother Elizabeth's grave. I'd made it a weekly ritual since learning the truth, finding comfort in these quiet moments. I thought I'd find you here, Sarah's voice came from behind me. The hospital called. The Elizabeth Memorial Pediatric Wing opens next week. I stood, brushing grass from my knees. Will you come to the opening? Of course. She touched the headstone gently. Elizabeth would have loved what you've done with the company, you know. She always believed in fixing things, not destroying them. My phone buzzed. A text from Vicente. Emergency board meeting. You need to see this. At the office, I found Dad and Vicente in heated discussion with our lawyers. A familiar face smiled from the conference room screen. Tucker, looking gaunt in his prison jumpsuit. What's going on? Your ex-boyfriend here, Vicente gestured to the screen, just offered us something interesting. I found more evidence, Tucker said, about other companies, other takeover attempts, names, dates, offshore accounts, everything. Dad leaned forward. In exchange for what? A reduced sentence, Tucker's lawyer spoke up. And immunity from prosecution in those other cases. I studied Tucker's face. Why now? Because Serenity was right about one thing. Karma catches up eventually. I can't undo what I did to you, Mila, but I can try to make things right. By turning on your other victims? I shook my head. That's not making things right. That's just saving yourself again. Take the deal. Sarah stepped into view of the camera. Tucker's eyes widened at the sight of his mother. Take it, and then never contact this family again. After Tucker's image disappeared, Vicente spread out the new evidence. He's not lying. This goes way beyond what we uncovered. Multiple companies, millions in fraud. Handle it, I told our lawyers. Make sure every victim knows the truth. Dad touched my arm. There's something else. Kendra's waiting in your office. I found her sitting with a familiar-looking bundle of letters. These came from Serenity's belongings, she said. She wanted you to have them. The letters were addressed to me, dated every year on my birthday, just like Elizabeth's letters, but these were from Serenity. I never sent them. Serenity had written in a note. I was too afraid of what they said about me, but you deserve to know who I really was, who I wanted to be. Have you read them? I asked Kendra. She shook her head. They're not my story to read. That evening, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by 3 sets of letters, Elizabeth's love, Serenity's pain, and my own journey written in the space between them. My phone lit up with a message from Vicente. Board approved the employee ownership program. Your mother's legacy lives on. A knock at my door revealed Dad holding takeout bags. Thought you might want company. We sat together, eating Chinese food like we used to when I was little. I've been thinking, he said, about Elizabeth, about Kendra, about all of it. I spent so long trying to protect everyone that I forgot the most important thing. What's that? That love isn't about protection. It's about truth, even when it hurts. I picked up one of Serenity's letters. Do you think she'll ever understand that? I think she already does. That's why she gave you those letters. My phone buzzed again, an email from the prison. Serenity had enrolled in a business ethics program. Small steps towards something like redemption. You know what Elizabeth used to say? Dad smiled, lost in memory. She said that family isn't who you're born to, it's who you choose to become because of them. I looked around my apartment, at the letters from 3 women who shaped my life in different ways, at my father who finally learned to speak his truth, at the company reports showing how we'd rebuilt something stronger from the ashes of betrayal. I choose this, I said quietly. All of it. The hard parts, the healing parts, everything in between. Dad raised his water glass. To choices, then, and to truth. To truth, I echoed, thinking of Elizabeth's letters waiting to be read, of Serenity's unspoken words finally finding their way home, of Tucker's evidence bringing justice to others, of Sarah's quiet strength, of Kendra's steadfast love. Sometimes family is what breaks you. Sometimes it's what puts you back together. And sometimes, if you're lucky, it's both. Teaching you that the cracks are where the light gets in. Showing you that even the deepest wounds can become doorways to something stronger, truer, and more beautiful than before. I picked up Elizabeth's next birthday letter, ready to read her words with new understanding. ready to let all these truths, the painful ones, the healing ones, the transformative ones, light the way forward.